HS level, then where will we? Of course. When it comes to the organization, as I said you before, that there are 4 managerial functions. So that is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So you are having this function because you are having this function in order to achieve the organizational goals. So when it comes to the organizational goals, so how can you achieve the organizational goals? So that is through the basic function of the organization. What is the firm's basic function? So the manufacturing firm meka. So the basic function of a manufacturing firm is that you have to convert your inputs into the outputs. Right? So you have the inputs, you process them, and you create the output. So what are the inputs in your organization? Right? So you have human resource people, you have money, you have raw material, capital resources. So you process these inputs and you create the output. So what would be the output in your organization? So that it can be either. So the good in a sense something tangible. අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් product එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ good එකක්ම විතරක් නෙවෙයි. අපි දැන් service එකක් වුණත් අපි ගන්න product එකක් විදියට. දැන් අපි ගන්න lecture එකක් දෙනවා නම් අපි ඒක කියන්නේ service එකක්. ඒකත් product එකක්. Right? So the products can be either goods or services. So when it comes to a firm, what they do, they get the input, they process it, and they create the output. So the output is the good or service. So this is the basic function of a firm. So this is what I said, that when you are converting input into the outputs, you have to get the maximum output. So that means the expected highest performance through the minimum inputs. They can be monkey inputs figure. Making inputs monkey way limited resources. Resources inputs, right? So when it comes to the human resource, it's also limited. Money, raw material, capital resources, everything is limited. Right? Human resources are that developing country, high population country. So you have unlimited resources, but no. When it comes to the skill resources, so that there is a scarcity in the skill resources, there is a limitation. Right, so that is there. So limited inputs stick up DNA. So you have to use the minimum inputs to create the highest expected outcome. Right, so that is output. Output the highest expected outcome you can have a profit taker. Right, so that is there. So this is known as the production process. So that's why we say that this process has to be done in an efficient manner. So the efficient manner is in the sense that you have to use the minimum resources in order to create the highest output. Okay. Now we are going to talk about the basics levels of the management. So when it comes to an organization, this is not something very difficult. So these are the things that you normally see in your day-to-day life in your company, right? So when it comes to an organization, so that there is a kind of a hierarchy. Right, so the reporting hierarchy. So if you look at the organization, you know that it's a kind of a ladder. Right, so on top you have the top managers, at the middle you have the middle managers, then you have the first line or the front line managers, then you have the non-managers. Then the university with. So on top you have VC, then you have the dean. It's like the organizational structure. So the organizational structure based on these managerial levels. So when it comes to the organization, so in a ladder you can have a kind of a hierarchy to represent once again. So when it comes to an organization, so the manager's job can be represented in a hierarchical level, right? So if you just if you just see this illustration, so it describes the hierarchical levels in the hierarchy of the management. So if you can see here, the top managers are most top, right? The top managers are at the top of the hierarchy. So when it comes to the top managers, they are the people who are responsible for the entire organization, right? So my top managers organization, the entire organization become balan, right? So for an example, so if you just think about the top managers, right? So the examples you can like president කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් අනේ දරුවෝ මේක නම් හරියනේ ගන්නේ ඊයේ 89 right? So when it comes to the top managers, right? So they are like the presidents la, company president kene, chairperson kene gattama, executive director, chief executive officer. Irshad, can you please switch off your mic?
Your mind gonna chief managers.
So when it comes to the managers, right, on top level, you have the top managers, right? So for an example, like presidents, chairpersons, like executive director, chief executive officers, executive vice president. So these are the example for the top managers, right? So when it comes to the top managers, Lama, so they are responsible, they are responsible for the entire organization, right? They will be setting goals for the entire organization, right? So they will be, these top managers are the people who make the goals for the entire organizations, as well as they are the people who are going to say that how you're going to achieve these goals. Company strategies, goals. So when you set the organizational goals, so the goals for the entire organization, so you have to think about what happens in outside environment. If there is a crisis, crisis එකක් තියෙන වෙලාවකදී අපිට සමහර වෙලාවට වෙනදා වගේම targets achieve කරන්න බැරි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. When there is a crisis, you might not be able to achieve the targets as previous, as usual. So in that case, top managers that they have to scan whatever happens in the external environment. Then only they have to set the targets. So when it comes to the top managers, how do the top managers so they are the people who monitoring and interpreting the external environment. So they are the people who scan the external environment, and accordingly, they make the goals for the entire organizations as well as the strategies for the entire organization. Right? For the entire organization. So that's why I said, so they are the people who monitor the external environment and they make goals accordingly, right? So when it comes to the top managers, right? So they look for the long-term future, right? They go to long-term future. Organization, they are the people who make goals for the entire organization. So they look for the long-term future. The long-term, so they think about the general environment trends and they think about the organizational overall success, right? So it's a huge responsibility. So when it comes to their responsibility, so the tech managers that they have to communicate whatever the vision and the mission of their organization, and also they have to shape their corporate culture, and they have to have a kind of a spirit organization, right? So they should have a kind of knowledge, skills, and capabilities to do this. Right, so the top managers are something like that, right? So these are the top managers. So these are the qualities that is required by the top managers. So these are the responsibilities of the top managers. I think that I got, I'm clear for you guys, right? So when it comes to the top managers, so when it comes to the company, so the managers, the job job role. I mean, the manager's job is can be represented in hierarchical level. So on top, you have top managers like president, as chief executive officers. So these are the most top people in the organization. So they look at the organization as whole. They create goals for the entire organization. So to create the goals for the entire organization, they have to scan and monitor the external environment. So they look at the external environment and set the goals accordingly. And also they set how you're going to achieve them. That means strategies, right? So they are the people who create the culture within your organization, corporate culture, right? So that's it. Then
Excuse me.
below the top, yes.
Madam, my name is Rajunath. Actually, I just want to make a small suggestion. Actually, these are the valuable notes, and the material also is very good, when very clear. But the only thing, before the lectures, if you can share it to this material for us, even
Yes,
we can
yes.
take up, we can take up the material. And the most important, more than this material, what you are explaining to us. So those are the specific notes for us, madam. So in that case, if you can share this material before the lectures, it will be easy to take the printout.
Yes.
And yeah, please.
Okay, definitely. What is your name? Name again?
My name is Rajunath.
Okay, Rajunath, it's like this. For my materials, of course, I used to do that because when it comes to the LMS, I just ask only now them to make the page. I mean, when it comes to a new course, you have to make a new page. For your course, now only, as this is the first course, now only they have prepared the new page. So that took little time to upload my materials. If not that, I'm always used to put my materials in advance. So that is my style. But in some cases, some lecturers, as I said you before, that they won't upload the materials. In that case, I can't do anything because that their style of doing the lectures. But in my case, of course, definitely I'll be giving you the lecture notes in advance. And there are many lecturers who likes to do that, and they will be providing you the lecture notes in advance. In this case, it got a delay because we took little time to make the page, right? So because we were in little hurry to start your intake, so we had to create another page for your intake because we have already have a different page, separate page for the first intake as well as the second intake. So for your one, we just created one, and definitely I'll be putting these materials as well as the next week materials today by itself, right? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the top managers, let us say, so we have middle managers, right? So when it comes to the middle managers, Lamai, so they work at the middle levels of the organization, right? So when it comes to the middle management, they are the people who are responsible for a particular business units, like major department, right? So if you, for an example, think about department head, division head, right? So these are the people who are in the middle level. Then top managers like Yani, so they were most top CEO. Marketing manager see they at the middle level, right? So when it comes to the middle managers, please remember that they are responsible for business units or the major departments, right? So that's there. So when it comes to the middle managers, Lama, so normally, typically, we have two or more management levels beneath them. So if you can see here, that you can see two management levels beneath the middle managers. So that is the first line and non-managers, right? So those are known as middle managers. In some cases, in some organization, even that there may be more than two. And general manager, so there might be 3 more levels beneath the middle management level, right? So that is there. So when it comes to the middle managers, Lamai, so these are the people who are responsible for implementing a particular strategy and policy for a අරගොල්ලෝ කියන ඒවට අනුව මේ guidelines වලට අනුව තමන්ගේ department එකට policies හදන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝ. So that they have to create goals, policies and strategies for their department. So that is based on the whatever the guidance given by the top managers, right? So that is something that has to be done by the middle managers, right? So that's about the middle managers. Then we have the first line managers, right? first line managers, sometimes we call it as the front line managers, right? Front line manager first line manager so they are the people who directly responsible for the production of goods and services. I just gave you an example of this production manager that who needs to create 30,000 units within a month. So he is a kind of a middle manager, right? Production manager. And he is a kind of a middle manager. So his CEO is at the top. So he is the one who gave him the target. Now the production manager is there. Now he is creating 30,000. So when he is creating the production manager, creating the 30,000 units, in a garment factory, there are lines. There are assembly lines. Then a line, if you just think about a garment factory, in those lines, there might be a supervisor. The supervisor is a line. AR directly make production responsible. So the supervisor is the person who responsible directly for this production. So when it comes to the frontline manager, we call them they are the people who directly responsible for the production of the goods and services. So they are the first or second level of management, and for an example, supervisor and supervisors, line manager, the section chief, right? So they are the example titles for this second level management. What is the second level? අපි ගත්තොත් බැංකුවක ගත්තොත් ඔයාලා දැකලා ඇති cash දෙන එකේ cashier එකේ ඉන්නවනේ cash දෙන එක නෑ, we call him the cashier. So the person who monitor the cashier is the cash officer. Cash officer is a kind of a first line manager, front line manager. So when you are selecting a front line manager, so the primary concern is the applications, right? So they should have a kind of a very good technical knowledge. Okay. So when you are selecting a particular frontline manager, that they should have a kind of a very technical background. අද ටෙක්නිකලි සවුන්ඩ් කෙනෙක් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒකනේ අපි මහාන තැන සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක්ට ගන්න එළියෙන්ද නෑ. මහපු කෙනෙක්වම තමයි ගන්නෙ. So when it comes to a person who work in the line will be promoted as a supervisor. Machine operator කෙනෙක් විදිහට ගන්නේ machine operates කරපු කෙනෙක්. So someone who operated the machines, right? So the frontline manager, so the one who had a kind of a very technical background, right? So these are the examples for the first line manager. Right? Then you have the non-managers. So the non-managers means all the other employees who is governed by these front line, middle line, and the top managers. So these are the levels. So see, this is the hierarchy of the management level. So this is the base for the organization structure. So when it comes to your organization structure, most of the time that it creates, that is based on these levels. So this is what we have discussed so far. So the first line manager, so here we go from bottom to top. If you can remember, in here we came from top to bottom. Now in here we are going to talk about from bottom to top, right? So in bottom, you have the first line manager. So they are the people who directly responsible for producing goods and services. So the people like the supervisors and the line managers, all this stuff, right? Then you have the middle managers. So they are in middle. So they are the people who coordinating in between the top managers and the frontline managers. So they coordinate the employee activity. So they determine which goods or services you're going to provide. So they are like the sectional heads, department heads, right? So they make the goals and strategies for their departments and heads under the guidelines of the top managers. So when it comes to the top managers, the examples like CEOs, right? So that they provide overall direction for an organization. They create overall goals and the strategies for the organization, entire organization, right? So these are the people who scan the environment and make the goals accordingly, right? So that's about the levels. Then, now we are going to talk about the skills required by the managers. So when it comes to the managers, so in order to do their managerial roles, so when it comes to the managers, that they have different roles to be done. So the planning, leading, planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Right? So the manager's job is very complex. It's multidimensional, right? So if you just think about the managers, that in order to do their jobs, that they might require range of skills. right? So when it comes to the managerial theories, right, they kind of people who wrote these books on management, right? So these people that they propose a long list of skills that is necessary for managing a particular organization, not only an organization, a department or a line. Right? So when it comes to that, can make so there are top managers, there are middle managers, front line managers, egolanto own skills when right? So in order to sometimes that they might, if you just think about the top managers, they need the skills to manage the entire organization. If you just think about the middle managers, they need the skills to manage the division. If you just think about a supervisor, that they need to manage a line, right? So when it comes to these managerial levels, so the different managers might be different skills, right? So when it comes to those books, that they have long list of skills that is necessary for managing department, organizations, or a specific category, right? So when it comes to these skills, so as you have a list of skills, so most of the people, scholars, that they have categorized these skills into three categories. මේ skills අපි කොටස් තුනකට වෙන් කරනවා. We have classified these skills into three categories. Right? So those are conceptual skills, human skills, technical skills. හරිද? Conceptual skill, human skill, technical skill. Conceptual skill. So what does it mean by the conceptual skill? Conceptual skill කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි, so the cognitive ability of the particular person. I mean, your cognitive ability to see the organization as a whole, right? So you see the entire organization as a whole and the relationship among the different people within the organization. හරිද? මුළු ඕගනයිසේෂන් එකම එකක් විදිහට තමන්ට බලන්න තියෙන හැකියාව, කැපැසිටි එකට තමයි මේ තියෙන conceptual skill එක කියලා කියන්නේ. So when it comes to the conceptual skills, so that involves managers thinking ability, right? So how you going to process the information, right? Then අපි ගත්තොත් environment එක scan කරලා information අරගෙන, so you gather information from the environmental scan, and then you get this information, you process them, and you create the goals, right? So your planning ability, so everything comes under the conceptual skill, right? So it involves that you have to decide whatever the business that fit to your organization, whatever the departments fit to your organization, right? So you think about the broader community who deal with your organization, right? So you're the person who thinks strategically, right? So that is there, right? So who needs this skill? then ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවනේ conceptual skill එක කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා. Conceptual skill එක කියලා කියන්නේ ඒ cognitive ability එක. හරිද? Thinking capacity එක. Environment එක බලලා ඒකෙන් information අරගෙන ඒක process කරන්න තියෙන හැකියාව, right? Plan කරන්න තියෙන හැකියාව. So that is known as the conceptual skill, right? So who needs the conceptual skill most? දැන් අපි කිව්වේ මුළු ඕගනයිසේෂන් එකම එක විදිහට බලන්න ඕනේ කවුද? එන්වයරන්මන්ට් එක ස්කෑන් කරන්න ඕනේ කවුද? ඒ top managers, right? So if you just think about the conceptual skills, මේ තියෙන එක ඕන ප්‍රමාණය තමයි මේ අපි quantitatively පෙන්නලා illustration එකෙන් දාලා තියෙන්නේ, right? So if you just think about the conceptual skills, it is mostly required by the top managers and relatively smaller portion in middle management. So if you just think about the technical one, that really this much, right? So it's very small, right? So the conceptual skill, now you know that who needs it most of those, that is the top managers. Right? Now let's talk about the technical skill. We'll leave human skill for a while and talk about the technical skill, right? So when it comes to the technical skill, right? So what does it mean by the technical skill? So that means your proficiency to perform a particular task, your ability to perform a particular task, right? So that means your mastery of a particular method, right? So particular technique, particular equipment, right? So particular function. Then අපි කිව්වම engineer කෙනෙක් විදිහට ඔයක function එකක ඉන්නවා, manufacturing එකක. Finance ගත්තාම accountant කෙනෙක් එක ගැන තියෙන technical skill එක, right? So these are the technical skills. Right, so the technical skills ගන්නවා කියන්නේ ඔයා මොකක් හරි specialized knowledge එකක් තියෙනවා. So your analytical ability in a particular tool, particular equipment, right? So this is known as the technical skill. So the technical skill is mostly required by whom? දැන් මේ තියෙන ප්‍රමාණය. So when it comes to technical skills, so that is mostly required by the frontline managers, supervisors. හරිද? මෙහෙම කිව්වට ළමයි many managers, right? So if you just think about the many successful managers in organization, they get promoted to their first management jobs by having excellent technical skill, right? ගොඩක් හොඳ ටෙක්නිකල් ස්කිල් තියෙන කට්ටිය තමයි මෙන්න මෙතන සක්සස්ෆුල් කට්ටිය මං කියන්නේ මෙතනට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. දැන් ඔයාලා බැලුවොත් මං අර කතා කරපු Jack Welch, so he was joined the General Electric as a chemical engineer. So he had a kind of a very expert knowledge in chemical engineering. He was a very good engineer. So he was promoted to the top level CEO level. So if you just think about the same Sundar Pichai, he is the person who developed this Chrome and all this stuff in the Google, right? So he just promoted into the CEO level, right? The top management level. So if you just look at most of the successful managers, top managers, that they have been promoted from front line to the top managers. Anyway, however, technical skills then become less important to the top managers once they promoted to this, right? But when it comes to the technical skills, right? So most of the successful top managers, like Elon Musk, failure, right? So has sometimes, right? So because that technical skill, I guess, right? So when it comes to these top managers, that's there, right? It's something. ඊළඟට අපි කතා කරන්න යන්නේ human skills ගැන. So when it comes to the human skills, දැන් අපි කතා කරා conceptual skills ගැන, and we talk about the technical skills, and now we are going to talk about the human skills. Human skill එක කියලා කියන්නේ, so that is the manager's ability to work with and through the people. Right? Management that you try to get the work done through the people. You're not going to work with the robots, right? So you're going to work with people. You try to get the work done through and with the people. So that's why Mari Parker had said that it's a kind of an art of getting things done through the people. Right? So it's a kind of an art, right? So when it comes to the human skills, so as I said you before, that you're going to work with the people, through the people. So you should have the capacity to work effectively with your group members, right? So this skill is demonstrated in the way that manager going to communicate with the other people. So how it's include like that, how you're going to motivate other people, how you're going to facilitate them, how you're going to coordinate them, how you're going to lead them, communicate them. And also when there is a kind of a problem, how you're going to resolve the conflicts, right? So these matters, right? So when it comes to the manager with the human skills, normally allows subordinates to express themselves, right? So that's there. So when it comes to the human skills, then conceptual skills, only top managers. Technical skill is demanded by the supervisors or the frontline managers. But when it comes to the human skill, මිනිස්සු එක්ක වැඩ කරන්න බැරි නම් එයාට මේ මොකක්වත් වෙන්න බෑ. හරිද? මිනිස්සු එක්ක වැඩ කරනවා කියන එක මේ තුන් දෙනාට එක ප්‍රමාණයෙන්ම තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Right? So the top managers, middle managers, as well as the frontline managers. And so you all should have the capacity to work with human, right? So that is something really important, right? So the manager with human skills likes other people and liked by them, right? So that is something really important, right? So the human skills definitely equally required by all the managerial levels. Okay. With that, we have come to the end of our first chapter, right? So let's have a recap what we have studied so far. So we have started to talk about the principles of management. So that means we talk about the basic concepts of the management. So when we try to develop the definition of the management, we said that we want to know some concepts. So the organization, goals, and the role of the management. So we said what is organization. So we said that the two or more people get together in order to achieve one particular goal. So we said that the goals have to be smart. So that means specific, measurable, achievable, and realistic and time bound. And we said that the role of the management is that they try to achieve the organizational goals. So the manager should guide it, right? So when we talk about who are the managers, what are their duties, and then we develop our definition of the management. We said that in definition of the management, there are two ideas. So the first thing is that there are four managerial functions: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And the second idea is that you have to achieve the organizational goals in efficient and effective manner. So the effective in the sense that you are doing right thing. Efficient means you are doing right that in right way, right? So then we talk about the main managerial function: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. What are those stuff? And we said that you have to collectively get together to do the major firm's function. So that is where you convert the inputs into the output. So as a manager, your expectation is to get the highest outcome by using the minimum resources and efficient manner, right? So then we talk about the levels of management. We said that the managers can be represented in a kind of an hierarchy. So the top managers, middle managers, frontline managers, and non-managers. We talk about their duties, their responsibilities, as well as the examples for those levels. Right? And then we talk about the managerial skills. So what are the skills required by different managers? So there can be a big list, right? So this list has been trimmed into three categories, right? So like conceptual skills, human skills, and technical skills. So we talk about these skills and we said that who needs those skills most, right? So that's what we have studied. Okay. Now we'll go to the second chapter. So our next chapter. So give me a few minutes to open it, right? Someone is asking, Madam, can you please show once the upper slide? What is the slide you want? And if you want, I can share it again. If not, that you can get it from the LMS. I'll definitely upload it to the LMS, right? I hope that I don't need to open it again, okay? If you really want, I can open it now, but I guess that you can get it right from LMS. Okay, let's start the organizational environment. So when it comes to the businesses, organizations, right, Lama? So when I was defining the management, I said that the most important concept of the definition of the management is that you have to think about the organization. So we said that when it comes to the organizations, they are not isolated, Lama. They are not isolated in the environment. So whatever you do in the businesses, that it might impact your community, as well as whatever happens in outside environment might impact your organizations too, right? So that is why we say the organizations are not isolated, that it is impacted by the outside environment. So that's why we said when it comes to the top managers that they have to scan the outside environment and accordingly that they have to create the organizational goals. දැන් අපි කියවනේ organizational goals හදන්න නම් environment එක scan කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා. ඒ මොකද it is impacted. Your business is impacted by the organizations, right? Organizational environment. So that's the reason. So now we are going to talk about the organizational environment. So what are the factors in the organizational environment and how those factors impact towards the business. So that is what now we're going to talk about. So the organizational environment. So when it comes to the organizational environment, Lamai, so organizational environment in a sense, so whatever the forces in the outside of your organization boundaries that might impact you. අපි මේක කතා කරන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා I want you to see this picture, Lamai, right? So this one, right? When it comes to the business, Lamai, so you have your business here, right? So when it comes to your business is here. So this is the outside environment. So outside environment, right? So you have the most recent layer as well as the outside layer. There are two layers as well as your organization is here. So when it comes to the outside environment, මෙතන ඇතුළත් environment එකක් තියෙනවා. හරිද? يعني ඇතුළේ organization එක ඇතුළේ තියෙනවා පිටරට තියෙනවා, right? So when it comes to the organizational environment, ළමයි, we say that this inside is the internal environment. හරිද? ඒක තමයි internal environment. මේ එළියේ මෙතනින් කළු circle එකකින් එහා පැත්තේ. So the out of this black circle, that's there the external environment. Right? Internal environment and the external environment. So when it comes to the internal environment, what are the internal environment? So what are the things that is within your organization? So your employees are there, your board of directors are there, whatever the strengths that you have. I mean, man can now infrastructure එකක් තියෙනවා නම් මොන හරි equipments තියෙනවා නම් දැන් අපි university එකක් විදියට ගත්තාම, so if you just take our university, Wambi University, so what are the things that we have inside? So our lecturers as well as our administrative staff and whatever the resources that we have, our labs, our fields, then our auditorium, everything is that is within our organization. අපේ අඩුපාඩුවක් තිබ්බත් දෙයක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒ ඔක්කොම ඇතුලේ. Strength and weaknesses come from inside. Internal organization. So those are the things within your organization. So we call it internal environment. In this study, Lama, we do not focus on the internal environment because internal environment is always in your control. අපිට control කරන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් අපිට staff එක මදි නම් අපිට staff එක recruit කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒගොල්ලන්ට training මදි නම් training දෙන්න පුළුවන්. Infrastructures නැත්නම් අපිට ඒව purchase කරන්න පුළුවන්. If you do not have a trained staff, you can give them the training. If you do not have the infrastructures, you can purchase them. You can get them. You can have access to them. Right? So you have control. When it comes to the firms, that internal environment, you have the strength and weaknesses within it. You have the total control in you. So in this lesson, we're not going to talk about the internal environment, right? So in this lesson, we are not going to talk about the internal environment, but we are going to talk about the external environment. Yellow color circle and the green color circle. So when it comes to the external environment, so if you just think about the external environment, right? So these are the factors that can directly or indirectly impact towards the organization. Directly or indirectly. Directly nang yellow color, indirectly nang green color. So these are the factors, external environment. So these are the forces that can be directly or indirectly impact towards the organization. So those forces are outside the boundaries of the organization. So when it comes to the external environment, internal environment strength and weaknesses. But external environment opportunities and threats. අපිට control කරන්න බෑ. We cannot control them, right? So that they arise, right? So the opportunities and threats. So opportunities in a sense that these are the opportunities. Opportunities means that the openings, right, for the managers, right? So whatever the chances that you get to enhance your profit in your markets, right? So these are the opportunities. So if there is a new technology, if there is a new market, so then you get an idea that right? අපි දැන් මෙන්න මේ මාකට් එක හොඳයි. හරිද? දැන් අපි හිතමු ග්ලෝ මාක් වගේ කට්ටිය හිතනවා දැන් තාම තියෙන urban areas වල විතරනේ. අපි හිතනවා right අපිට යන්න පුළුවන් ඇතුළටත්. Right? It's a kind of a new market. So opportunities are there. Threats mean issues that can harm your organization. So that mean අපි හිතනවා global pandemic එකක් එනවා. economic crisis එකක් එනවා. එතකොට අපේ business අපි දන්නවා අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම contraction එකක් එන්න පුළුවන්, profit වල oil shortage එකක් එනවා, right? So that's there. So these opportunities and threats always come from the external environment. right? So the managers that they have to scan the organizational environment. So that means the forces outside the organization without what do you call outside the boundaries, and you have to check whatever the opportunities and threats in the markets when you set your organizational goal, right? So that's about the organizational environment. When it comes to the organizational environment, ළමයි මං කියවනේ දැන් directly or indirectly කියලා. මේ directly ඒවා. So the nearest factors that the factors in the close proximity, right? The factors that can directly impact towards the organization are known as the task environment. අපි මෙන්න මේ කැලට කියනවා task environment කියලා. හරිද? Task එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි ඒකට කියනවා micro කියලා. හරිද? Micro factors. එක්ක task factors, එක්ක micro factors. ඊළඟට අපි ගාව තියෙනවා ළමයි මේ outside factors, right? So they are known as general environment. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි මේකට කියනවා macro factors, right? දැන් අපි කියවනේ මේ external environment එකේ ඒවා control නැහැ කියලා. We said that you cannot control the external environment. Right? So the internal environment, of course, you can control, but the external environment you cannot control. External environment එකේ මේක control කරන්න ටිකක් හරි පුළුවන් කියලා හිතුවට මේක කරන්නම බෑ. It's really difficult. It's impossible, right? So that's there. So when it comes to the external environment, you can divide into two categories like task environment and the general environment, or else we can say micro environment and the macro environment. Okay. And let's talk about the task environment. So these are the factors that can directly impact the organization. Task environment කියලා කියන්නේ directly organization එකට impact කරන්න පුළුවන් කට්ටිය. How to the පුළුවන් directly organization එකට impact කරන්න? ඉස්සෙල්ලම පටන් ගන්න වෙන්නේ අපිට customer, because you just think about your business, right? The epicenter of the business is the customer, right? The customers, customer is the king here, and so the customer is the epicenter. So they are the people. Customer අපේ භාණ්ඩ පාවිච්චි කරේ නැත්නම්, so our business will be in vain. So if your customers will stop using your products, so then that is the end of your business. So the customer, even we don't understand this simple theory, that's the truth, right? So if they stop using our products, so that will be the end of our story, right? So that is there. So they are still many customers, right? The customers, they need to pass when it comes to your organization. So you produce your product through the raw materials. So how do you get your raw materials? That is from the suppliers. So if they do not supply your inputs, you won't be able to do your production, right? So that will be again the end of your story, right? Suppliers, so that they can directly impact. Right? So then how you will take your products to the customer? So that is through the distributors. So if you don't have the distributors, you can't take your product to the customer. So that will be again the end of your story. Then you have a lot of competitors, right? So if they do something that they will directly impact towards your business. So these are the people who can definitely directly impact your business. Whether you got a business gonna end or not, so that depends on these guys. So we'll talk about them now. So the first one is the suppliers. Even though the first one should be the customers, we'll talk about the suppliers first, right? Suppliers like Yana. So these are the people who provide inputs for your organization. So when it comes to your business, so the quality of your product, so that is purely depend on the quality of the inputs as well as lamai. So when you're producing something, whether you can produce it continuously, sustainably, right? අපිට දිගටම flow එකේ ඇඳුම් හරි හදනවා නම් මොන හරි දෙයක් manufacture කරනවා නම් මොන හරි agricultural food එකක් හදාගෙන යනවා නම් ඒක දිගටම continuously හදාගෙන යන්න නම් continuously inputs එන්න එපා. So in order to do a continuous production, that you should have a continuous flow of supplies. Am I getting through to you, right? So this is something very important, right? So in order to have a quality and continuous production, you should have quality and continuous supply of input, right? So you should have continuous and quality supplies to do the quality and continuous output. right? So that is something necessary. So the suppliers, in that case, suppliers bargaining power is really high, right? So if you have, as a manager, කැමති එක supplier කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවට the suppliers are ගොඩක් ඉන්නවා. සාමාන්‍ය manager කෙනෙක් කැමති වෙන්නේ ළමයි. So the managers that they would like to have many similar supplies. So when it comes to the managers, lamai, that they would like to have many suppliers, because if you just rely upon a single supplier, what will happen? එක supplier කෙනෙක් මත අලාපයක් දුනොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? depend උනොත්. එයා නැත්තම් ඔක්කොම ඉවර වෙනවා. So most of the time that you would like to have many more suppliers, because then you do not depend on one single supplier. So then you have a say. And so on the other case, if your supplier, if you just take the list of most of the multimillionaires in the world, and that they have some limited resource that they supply to some nations, right? So that's why we say when it comes to the countries, even so if you have some natural resources, for an example, if you have the crude oil, then most of the countries that they can survive, right? So because that they do have the electricity, that they have the energy within the nation, so that they can survive. So when you have a limited resource, so then it will be a kind of a winning success factor, right? So the suppliers, so if they have something limited resource, then their bargaining power is really, really high. So when it comes to the suppliers, it is essential to keep relationship with the suppliers, because අපි ගත්තොත් ඔයාගේ කම්පිටිටර්ටයි ඔයාටයි දෙන්නටම inputs දෙන්නේ කවුද? suppliers. So if you do not have a relationship, දැන් අපිට ඔයක දැකන්න පුළුවන් crisis එකක් වෙලාවේදී දැන් crisis එක වෙලාවේදී global pandemic එක වෙලාවේදී, then there was a difficulty in getting the inputs just because of some of the barriers for the export and import market, right? So then the suppliers that they used to send always the best inputs to the people who had the close contact with them, right? Then අපි ගත්තොත් මොකක් හරි factories දෙකක් ඉන්නවා කියලා අපි ගත්තොත් අපි අර ඒකනේ හැමතිස්සෙම කාගේල් සැඩ් එකක් දාන්නේ දැක්කද? අපි කොහොමද මේ දෙන්නේ වෙන කෙනෙක්ට මේ අර ඒක මම මතක නැහැ මිල්ක් හරි මොන හරි කියා හරි මොන හරි ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ harvest එක එයා කියනවා එයා වෙන කෙනෙක් ඉල්ලනකොට කියනවා no we can't give it to you because the Cargills was the person who was with us when the pandemic was there කියලා කියන්නේ. That's the relationship between the suppliers, right? අන්න ඒකයි කියන්නේ. So you should have a kind of a good relationship with the suppliers to get the best, right? So this is about the suppliers. So you know now that the suppliers can directly impact towards the organization. So when it comes to a limited resource, then the suppliers bargaining power is really, really high, right? Then we අපි ලක්ෂණ ඉතල හැම කියන්නේ මේවනේ methods මේව දෙනයි. යකඩ වගේ දෙයක් ගන්න ඕන නම් crude oil වගේ ගන්න ඕන නම්, so then the suppliers bargaining power is really high. Now we are going to talk about the distributors, right? So the distributors means the people, when it comes to the producer, so once you produce something, now it has to go to the customer. It's really nice if the producers can directly go and sell the products to the customer, right? So, but it's practically not possible, because most of the time you don't have the capacity, you don't have the experience, as well as you don't have money to do that. So in that case, you use most of the intermediaries who are specialized and who have the capacity to do that, right? So the distributors mean, or the intermediaries mean, that the people who will be taking your products to the customer, right? Sometimes you might not have the intermediaries, then we call it direct marketing. Intermediaries la නැතුව කෙලින්ම producer customer ට දෙනවා නම් අපි කියනවා ඒක direct marketing කියලා. But most of the time when the market is very large, it is really difficult to approach your customers individually. So in that case, you might use number of intermediaries, right? So these people are known as the distributors, right? So when it comes to the agricultural marketing channels, so these distributors are becoming very big problem, because when it comes to the farmers, that they sell the product for a very minimum price, that they get very little as a profit, But when it comes to the customer, they get the profit, they get the product for a very high price where the profit will be retaining with the distributors. So this is a kind of an everlasting problem when it comes to the agricultural marketing. So that's the biggest problem in Sri Lankan marketing sector. But anyway, so you know that the distributors, like distributor, so how you gonna send your products to the customer. So most of the time that you might use the retailers, Lamai. So the retailers, or else sometimes you might have a web marketing website to do the direct marketing, online shopping. Just after the global pandemic, that the online marketing, online purchases has been double, I would say, right? So that therefore that payment gateway brand can so it's became a kind of a very important payment online marketing online purchase online payment gateway so it's became a kind of a big strength when it comes to the online marketing. So the distributors whoever take your product to the customer, so we can see the retailers plays a kind of a dominant role in this distributional channel. So when it comes to the distribution channels, අපි ගත්තොත් retailers ලා නැත්තම් සමහරවිට තමන්ගේ own shops වලින් අපි ඒක දෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපිකට කතා කරොත් දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් Toyota වලින් Toyota තමන්ගේම මේ ඒවෙන් ගන්න පුළුවන් ඒවා තියෙන්නේ. හරිද? ඒකකොට තමන්ගේම shop එක තියෙන their own subsidiaries might be there. Or else that there might be the retailers. So when it comes to the retailers, you know that the famous Sri Lankan retailers like Cargill, Skills, Glowmark, Laugh, Apico, there are a lot, right? And also there are small and medium retailers like අපි දකින්නේ තමන්ගේ පැතිවල සාලින්ද super ආරවා 7 star නම්මන හොයන්නේ. So these are kind of small and medium enterprises. Right? So when it comes to the distributional channels, so that their influence for the organization is really high. මේක හරිම වැදගත් කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි දැන් මම ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ අපි මගේ ගත්තොත් so my parents never used to purchase the stuff from the food cities, Cargill or the Kiels food cities. That they always used to buy the goods from the nearest shop. Right? But if you just think about myself, I never used to buy the things from the nearest shop. I always buy the things from the Cargill or Kiels because that is the most nearest shop for me even. So then I always used to buy the stuff from the Cargill or the Kiels that's in bulk. I always used to buy the stuff that is required per a month, right? So this is the now nature, right? Then අපි හැමෝම එහෙමනේ මම විතරක් නෙමෙයි ඕගොල්ලොත් දැන් එහෙමයි කරන්නේ. අපි හැමෝම ගන්නේ food city එකකින් බඩු. So when we buy the things from the food city ළමයි, you I don't know whether you have noticed this, that these things happen. So when you buy the condiments or the sugar or the salt or these kind of items and the stationeries from the retailers, if you don't find your own brand, your preferred brand, sometimes you used to buy whatever the things that they have in there, right? Then අපි ගත්තොත් අපි condiments ගත්තොත් අපි spices ගන්න මිරිස් කුඩු ගත්තොත් අපි ගන්න brand එක නැති වුණාට අපි සමහරකට ඒක නැත්තම් එතනින් because it's convenient. So when things happens like that, what will happen? So then the small and medium condiments producers, spices hadana kattiyata, they won't have a space to sell their product. If the Cargills and Kiels say no for their products, then they won't have a place to sell their products. So then it will be a big problem because people might start to buy their own brands, the retailers' own brands. So then they will have the capacity to take off some of the small and medium enterprises out of the market. So it's the big problem. It's a big criticism against the distributional or retail channels. So when it comes to the global market, this is really, really heavy. If you just think about the global market, it's a big issue. Walmart, Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury, Walmart, especially if you just think about the companies like Walmart, you know that their profit is sometimes even bigger than the GNP of some countries, right? So Walmart has many retail channels in many countries, more than 80 outlets, right? So more than different countries. I don't exactly remember. right? So when it comes to them, so this is the criticism against them, that they always try to take off most of the small and medium enterprises if they do not come under the Walmart brand. හරිද Walmart හරි ඇස්ත brand එක හරි යටතට එන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒ වගේ පුංචි අයට sell කරන්න විදියක් නැති වෙනවා. So it's a kind of a very big criticism. So you know that the impact that the distributors can do on your organization, right? The distributors can directly impact කරන්න පුළුවන් කට්ටිය. And now we are going to talk about the customers. So the most important, the category. So the people who buy your goods, right? So if they do not buy, you don't have a business, right? So when it comes to the, even though that they are that much important, you don't care, right? That අපි ඔච්චර කොහොම කරත් අපි customers ලා කියලා අපිට කවුරුත් business සලකන්නේ නැහැ. AI. It's because of the bargaining power. So when it comes to the customers, they have a lot of customers. So they don't mind even that they're going to lose one of our, right? So that's the problem. So when it comes to the customers, then අපි එහෙම නැතුව දැන් අපි හිතමු suppliers ලා ගොඩාක් ඉන්න දැනකට customer කෙනෙක් ගියොත් customer ගේ bargaining power එක in that case really high. So මම දැන් හිතන්නකෝ KFC McDonald වගේ that they buy chicken and lettuce and all this stuff, chicken, lettuce and potatoes from the local farmers in US, right? So when it comes to the local farmers, are the businesses then, right? Now the KFC and the McDonald becomes the customers. But if they're going to lose their customers, kind of KFC එක හරි McDonald හරි බෑ කිව්වොත් එයාලානේ දැන් customer ඒ වෙලාවේදී customer සලකන්නේ මාරු prominent. ඒ වෙලාවේදී customer ගේ bargaining power is really high. එතනදී customer වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කවුද? McDonald හරි KFC හරි. That if they do not buy the products from the meat and lettuce and the cheese from the local farmers, so what will happen? That their entire business might be lost, drop, right? So then the customers get customers bargaining power කියලා එකක්. So in that case, customers bargaining power is really high. So if you go to a Sunday market, then අපි ගත්තොත් gas එකක් ගන්න ගියාම ඔයාලට කිසිම customer potential එකක් කියන්නේ priority එකක් නැහැ. අපි වැදලා වගේනේ අරන් ඉන්නේ gas එක. ඒ වගේ නෙමෙයි අර Sunday market එකට ගිහලා එළවලු ගන්නකොට everybody is asking come නෝන ඇවිල්ලා ගන්න. ඇවිල්ලා ගන්න කියලා කියන්නේ. Everybody is trying to get the attention of the customer because you know that there are a lot of other people who sell the same vegetables. So you need to get the customers as much as possible. Right? So the customers can directly impact towards your organization. Post it is there. Right? Then competitors. ඊට පස්සේ අපි ගත්තොත් competitors ලා ගත්තොත් ළමයි. Competitors ලා කියන්නේ කවුද? So these are the people who sell the same product, who produce the same products like you guys, right? So when you and your competitors produce the same product, so the customers, that they should have a reason to buy your product. So we call it as the customer value, right? So when your competitors do something, right, so that might definitely affect your product too. How the company take apart if that they're going to reduce the price for some amount, definitely that the customers will buy their product, right? So there is a kind of a direct impact from the competitors, right? So then you have to think about it. Right, the competitors are අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම හිතන්න ඕනේ because that they can directly impact towards your business, right? And now we are going to talk about the general environment. General environment කියලා කිව්වේ මම අර කිව්වේ මෙන්න මේ ටික. දැන් අපි කතා කරේ we have talked about this yellow color circle. So now we are going to talk about this green color circle. So when it comes to this green color circle, so we call them as the indirect factors that impact towards the organization. කියන්නේ general environment එකේ තියෙන wide factors. මේවා ගත්තාම මේවට directly impact කරන්න බෑ ළමයි business එකට. එතකොට මේක මොකද වෙන්නේ? මෙයාලා මේගොල්ලෝ impact කරනවා මෙන්න මේ කියපු හතර දෙනාගෙන් එක්කෙනෙක්ට. suppliers ලාට distributors ලාට or customers ලාට competitors ලාට. Then only they can impact towards the organization. මම නිකන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගන්නම්. If you just think about the economic forces, then there is an inflation. What will happen to the customers, right? The customers ලාට ගන්න බැහැ බඩු. මොකද disposable income එක අඩුයි. So then the customers purchasing power is losing and then the demand for a particular good is losing. So that impact towards the organization. බඩු ගන්නේ නැහැ. බඩු ගන්න නැති වුණාම අපිට problem, right? So that's why I said when it comes to the general environment factors, so that cannot directly impact towards the organization. So they indirectly impact. They impact the task environment and then impact the organization. So when it comes to the general environment, it is really difficult to control. Not difficult, actually, it's impossible to control the factors in the general environment, right? So whatever the or the වෙනස් කරන්න බෑ. What you have to do is that you have to take precautions, proactive. You have to be active or proactive to take the remedies to utilize the opportunities or ignore the threats, right? So that's what you have to do. So when it comes to the general environment, so that there are many factors like economic, technological, demographic, and cultural factors. So first we'll talk about the economic forces. Right. So economic forces in a sense, so whatever happens in the national economy and global economy, how does it impact towards the organization? So you know that is directly impact towards the organization. So the economic fluctuations, currency fluctuation, dollar value, so that's there will be a problem, right? So interest range rate unemployment rate economic recession what will happen? So their purchasing capacity will loss. So the demand for the sum of the goods might be lost. Then අපිට ඊළඟ දැන් මේ අවුරුද්ද මේ මාසේ ඉඳන් ටැක්ස් එක ගෑවුවට පස්සේ ටැක්ස් එකකින් ලක්ෂ දෙකක් විතර කැපුණොත් එකමාරක් විතර මිනිස්සෙක්ගේ කැපුණොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? So the people who have spent for the entertainment, definitely entertainment budget එක අඩු වෙලා යනවානේ. ෆිල්ම් බලන්න ගිය කට්ටිය, ට්‍රිප් යන කට්ටිය, travel so demand for those stuff will be reducing. Apartments ගන්න කට්ටිය අඩු වෙනවා. එකපාරට interest rate එක වැඩි වෙනවා. දැන් loan rate එක. හරිද? එතකොට අඩු වෙනවා, right? So unemployment rate එක අඩු වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ එහෙමයි, right? So these are the factors, how these factors impact towards the organization. This is not only for the Sri Lankan community, Laman. This is always similar for the global community, for global economy, global organizations. So if you just think about in Australia, most of the Toyota, Ford, as I can remember, Toyota, Ford, both of the organization that they have taken their manufacturing firms from Australia, just because that when it comes to the Australian currency, that there was a kind of a high fluctuation. If you just look at the then bushfires of global pandemic, there was a high fluctuation. So that the people, most of the manufacturing firms, that they started to take their manufacturing firms out, so that they had only the head offices. So if you just think about the Sri Lanka here now, you can see that most of the apparel garments that they move towards the other countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, as well as Indonesia. It's just because of this interest rate problem. And also most of the countries now, they are taking, most of the apparel garments in Sri Lanka, that they take their head offices to somewhere like Singapore, because when it comes to this dollar restriction, dollar count dollar restriction. So that will be a big problem, because then we got the economic process that dollar account input dollar garment එකක් නම් එයාලා ගන්න ඕනේ fabrics ගන්න ඕනේ threads ගන්න ඕනේ ඒවා ගන්න ඕනේ පිටරටින් ඒකට pay කරන්න ඩොලර් වලින් ඩොලර් තියා ගන්න පුළුවන් බැරි වුණොත් ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා. So that it will be a big problem for them, right? So these economic forces, right? So that is how the economic forces impact towards the organization. So the next thing is the technological forces. Technological forces, so if you just think about the world population, more than 2/3 of the world population that they use mobile phones. So 50% of them, more than 50% of them use smartphones, and more than 50% of the global population that they have access to the internet through the mobile devices. So you know that now how exposed the community to the information. හරි දැන් ඔයාලගේ අපේ අම්මලගේ කාලේ වගේ නෙවෙයි අපේ කාලේ වගේ නෙවෙයි දැන් ඕගොල්ලෝන් බලනකොට අපි මාර විදියට information වලට expose අපි හැමදේම දැන් දන්නවා, right? එතකොට when it comes to a manager, that they should know that there are advantages and disadvantages for the organization. දැන් අර ඉස්සර කාලේ වගේ TV advertisement ම දාන්න ඕනේද? You know, when it comes to the earlier days, right? So if you just think about the previous era, if you just wanted to communicate with the entire organization, that you should have put a kind of a commercial advertisement in TV, which was very costly. But today, if you think about the organizations, that they have many opportunities. You can have your own YouTube channels, you can have your own blogs, you can have your FB pages, right? Twitters and Instagram, everything is there. So you can communicate to more than million customers without even cost, right? So with a very small cost. Right, so that's the expansion of the technological forces. So as an organization, you have to think about the manager. As a manager, you have to think about the impact of the technological forces and how that can be used to impact the organization through these through කොහොමද අපි ඒක use කරගන්නේ කියලා. ටෙක්නොලොජි එක වැඩි වුණාම අපිට අර ට්‍රැකින් සිස්ටම් දාන්න පුළුවන්. අර අපි දාන සප්ලයර්ස්ලට දැන් සප්ලයර්ස්ලා ගත්තාම දැන් අපි හිතමු අපි කීල්ස් එක ගන්නවා ඩයපර්ස් ගන්න පැම්පර්ස් අපි හිතමු Walmart එක කියලා. So the Walmart is there that they take the diapers from the pampers. You know the pamper is the brand, right? The diaper is the product, right? You get the diapers from the pampers. Then pampers ටික ඉවර වුණාම RF එකෙන් radio frequency identification tags වලින් so that it's identified that the pampers are no more there in the shelves. So then the message goes to this warehouse එකේ තියෙන එකට යනවා. එතනත් නැත්නම් suppliers there යනවා. Automatically that they will be transferring the pampers to the Walmart. So it's how that you can use the technological force to impact the organization through the distributor. නිකම්ම නෙවෙයි technological force වලට නිකන් impact කරන්න බෑ. කවුරු හරි through තමයි අතන්ට එන එක තමයි indirect fact එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ. දැන් mobile devices වැඩි වුණ හින්දා communication කරන්න පුළුවන් කාව through the customers ලා through. Right? So that's how it happens. The next one is the cultural forces, right? So the cultural forces in a sense, when it comes to the manager, right? So when you deal with your customers or whoever, that you have to think about the culture. Right, so sometimes when you take the same product to a different culture, you have to be very careful. Right, so the best example that I can give you is the McDonald's. Right, so when it comes to the McDonald's, when they started, when it comes to the McDonald's, when they started first time in India, that it took them 1 year to identify that their beef burger failed just because of a cultural issue, right? So when it comes to the beef, you know that the cow is a kind of a sacred animal in most of the Indian community. So then they just they never wanted to buy this beef burger just because of this reason. So the McDonald's that they had to replace beef burger from the lamb burger for the Indian community. So that's the kind of a very good example. And the next one is the LG Electronics. It's a South Korean company, you know. When it comes to the LG Electronics, that they have a very nice history for the adaptation for adapting their product into some of the culture. Right? Again, ඒගොල්ලෝ අර mini cultures කියලා දැන් එක එක market වලට එක එක products හදන්නේ. දැන් Indian culture එකට එක එහෙම වෙනම ඒගොල්ලෝ focus කරනවා, right? So they are focusing and they do small changes according to the requirements of that particular culture. Right? For the Indian market, that they used to produce more colorful products with the sound system. When they have the TVs and all this stuff with the very good sound system. Right? So just the one good example that I can give you is that when it comes to the LG Electronics, it's a South Korean, as I said you before, the South Korean product. So in Korea, that there is a food which is known as kimchi, right? So the kimchi made out of cabbage, right? So when it comes to the cabbage, you know, when you put the cabbage in fridge, it gives you a very bad smell, bad odor, right? So it was a kind of a very big problem for the Korean people. So that because that the biggest problem that they had was that they wanted to keep kimchi food in fridge without making any bad smell, right? So the LG Electronics that they have identified this requirement and they made a kind of a different refrigerator with a different separate compartment to keep kimchi food. Right? So then this refrigerator, it became a kind of an essential household equipment in Korean household. So that it's a kind of a good example that how they have changed their products according to the cultural requirements, right? So that's something really important. So you know that you have to identify the culture and then you have to make the special changes. You know, there is another good example for the United Airlines. So when the United Airlines take care of their flights from Hong Kong, that the flight was decorated in white carnation, which is a kind of a morning color for most of the Asians, right? So the white carnation, it represents, symbolize death. So most of the Hong Kong people that they denied to get into the flights by saying this, right? So it's a kind of a good example. So when you are taking some stuff that you have to think about the culture, and also when Michael Dell, again, they lighting area. So when they try to take their products, their computers from US to the Chinese market, that there was a very big problem because of the Chinese slangs, right? So then they couldn't compete with the Lenovo at that time. Right? So it's a kind of a good example. Right. So the culture is a kind of a very, when it comes to the culture, it has a huge impact towards the අපි හැමෝම එහෙමනේ ළමයි දැන් හොයා හිතන කල්චර් එක දැන් අපි හැමෝටම ගත්තාම දැන් කල්චර් එකක් විදිහට රීජන් එක මොකක්ද රීජන් රිලිජන් එක අමතක කරන්නකො කල්චර් එකක් තියෙනවානේ දැන් අපි බුද්දිස්ට් කෙනෙක් මුස්ලිම් කෙනෙක් කැතලික් කෙනෙක් ගන්නකොට ඒගොල්ලෝ හැදෙන ඒ එන්වයරන්මන්ට් එක අනුව ඒ කල්චර් එක අනුවනේ අපි අඳින පළදින හැමදේම අපි තෝරන් ගන්නේ. So when you buy something that you have to think about the culture, right? So that's something really important. So these are some the technological, socio-cultural, I'm a double print Latina, so ignore it. The next one is the demographic forces. So the demographic forces in a sense that whatever the changes in the population, composition and the diversity of the population. Again, we got the population, gender, female, male composition, age composition, ethnic origin, right? So this is known as the demographic forces, right? So when it comes to the gender, so if you have the female community, right? So if you have working women, right? The working women composition එක වැඩි නම් කෙනෙක් රස්සාවල් කරන women community එක වැඩි නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? So they don't have time to cook, right? Definitely that happens, right? So if I have the lectures until 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock or something like that, sometimes I do have the lectures that until 8 to 9, sometimes 8, right? That is in Saturdays and Sundays. So in that case, we don't have time to cook, right? So if our servants are not there, so then we do have to definitely buy food from outside. So then it's a kind of a good opportunity for the fast food restaurant. You can fast food කඩියට ඒ quality වැඩි වෙනවා. ඒගොල්ලන්ට එතකොට working community එක women community එක වැඩි නම් women employment එක වැඩි නම්, so it's a kind of a good opportunity for them. Right? And then when it comes to the aging population, so if you have a large number of people, people who are aged people who have a very good disposable income, so it's a kind of a good market. So that's why the bank started to have the senior citizen accounts, right? So they knew that the people have money. So they then encourage them to put their money with the high interest rate. I don't think that it will continue further, but it was there. Right? So when it comes to the elderly home, right? Elderly home, paid elderly home, right? So when it comes to this elderly home, that nowadays we can find that you can have all-inclusive packages for 60,000 rupees. So that's include healthy food as well as body checkup and a community to, same age people to have a chat and to dance and to sing and to whatever the things that they like, that you have to pay 60,000 for that stay. Right, so that is a kind of a good example, elderly home. ඊළඟට ethnic origins ගත්තාම ඔයගොල්ලෝ දැක්ලා ඇති දැන් if you feel that if there is a kind of increase in the Muslim community, so what will happen? Then the demand for the halal food will be increasing. So if you just think about UK, that there is a highly increasing Indian communities there, so that they have different demand for this Indian stuff, right? So these are the stuff that when it comes to the demographic forces, right? So what happens? So that you have to think about those stuff. Then the political and legal forces. So the political and legal forces in a sense now, so how the political factors and the legal factors impact towards the organization, right? So when it comes to the political factors, then we got the politically unstable now. So the most of the organization that they don't like to stay in their kind of countries, right? So if you just think about the Ukraine and Russian wars, that you can think about what happened to the McDonald. So just because of the pressure came from the European region, so the McDonald had to take away from from Russia. But I think it became a kind of a huge loss for McDonald's when they don't talk about it. That was the biggest chain. මට මතක විදියට ඒ රෂියන් මාල් එකක තිබ්බ McDonald's restaurant එක තමයි ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ biggest restaurant එක 700කටද වැඩි එකට ඉඳගෙන කන්න පුළුවන්. හරිද? So then when you have to take them off, so it is a kind of a big loss even though they don't talk. So the political factors impact towards the organization. Political in the sense the corruption is also there. You know that there is something called corruption index. Corruption index එක කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ රටවල් කොච්චර corrupt, so the bribes that you have to give. So when you need to do that, ඒකනේ අර ජයිකා එකකින් අර මේ මොනොට්‍රේල් එක දානකොට ඊළඟට රිචඩ් බ්‍රැන්සන් ආව වෙලාවේ. So that there was a kind of a high bribe issues in Sri Lanka. So when it comes to this corruption index, so ඒකදී economic magazines වලින් එක මේ rank කරන්නේ corruption එක අනුව අපි rank කරනවා. That they rank according to the අපි බලනකොට මේ මොනවාද political and legal forces ගන්නකොට so corruption එක අනුව corruption එක අපි උඩින් ඉඳන් අන්තිම වෙනකල් හදනවා, right? So when it comes to the most of the organization that they rank from top to bottom. එතකොට උඩම තියෙන corruption එක අඩු ඒවා. So on top you have the countries with least corruptions like Denmark and Switzerland and all these countries. But on bottom you have the most corrupted countries. As I remember, I'm quite sure that the Sri Lanka was there in 92. But now I think, as I remember, it's somewhere like in between 90 to 100, right? Further went down. Right, so that's about the corruption. So when the corruption is high, then the people don't like to start businesses in your country. So if you can remember, when I was talking about the apparel industry, I said that the most of the apparel garments that they now move away from Sri Lanka because of this currency and the inflation issue. But when they're moving, so that they had several destinations like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. And Haiti too, but because they have selected those countries, because of their high population. So the population is high, the labor cost is low, so that was the reason. But when it comes to the Haiti, now that they don't like to move towards Haiti because of this bribery scene, right? So that they have to give the ransoms for these guerrilla thugs, local thugs, thuggerisms, right? So that you have to pay for them. So it became a problem, right? So that's there. When you know that when it comes to the Afghanistan, yes, when US were bombing Afghanistan, then the people in Pakistan that they started to set fire to the KFCs, right? So that is happening. So these things are there. The political and legal forces in Sri Lanka is also those stuff are happening, right? So that's there. There's nothing to. It's not a secret, right? So that agendas in India and only political, legal issues, right? So those things are happening, right? So in globally as well as locally, that happens, right? So right? So you have to think about these political and legal forces. And also when it comes to the legally, most of the countries in some countries you cannot have comparative marketing. In some countries you cannot have labor marketing, right? Child labor advertisement. So you have to be very careful. And in some countries, that when it comes to Sri Lanka, you can have the medical cannabis, but you cannot trade them, right? But in US, in some regions, you can trade cannabis, right? In Australia too. So that's there. So these are the stuff that you should concern. Corruptions, ransoms, I can give you a very good example. So when I don't remember exactly the tire company. So when it comes to the particular Japanese tire company, when they started their company in Mexico, the CEO's daughter was kidnapped from Mexican guerrilla team. So the company had to pay the biggest ransom at that time, at that period, that era, to save the child. right? So that was there. So then it's becoming a huge issue for the managers to deal with this stuff, right? The political and legal forces are really important. Then the global forces, right? So Lama, when it comes to the businesses, right? So with the open economy, as I said you before, so it's really nice if you can totally survive within the country, right? It's really nice if you can survive, but it's not possible because most of the country that they don't have natural resources, right? So if you think about Sri Lanka, even though we are very proud of our country and the culture, but we don't have anything in here except the tea, and that's the truth, right? So we don't have the most of the natural resources අපිට ඕන කරනවා අපි ගාව නෑ ළමයි. හරිද? කියන්නේ අවශ්‍ය කන්ටිනියු කරන්න පුළුවන් natural resources අපිට නෑ. කියන්නේ රෂියා මෙච්චර sanctions දාලා රෂියා කොහොම හරි survive වුණානේ. කොච්චර ප්‍රශ්න තිබ්බත් because of why that they had those natural resources to survive. Right? So when it comes to Sri Lanka, that we are very lacking those natural resources. Gas තියෙනවා, oxygen තියෙනවා, but still we don't have those natural resources to survive within, right? So just because of that, most of the countries, some like that, so they don't have the natural resources. They have to depend on the other countries. So just because of that, the open economy is there. So you are free to trade. But when you're trading, Rama, that there are problems, right? So when you're trading, so the people that they do get the goods that they don't have as well as they do have. අපි import කරනකොට, so when you are importing the stuff, when you are taking the goods, that you are not importing just the stuff that you don't have, you also import the stuff for the low cost, or the low price. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපිට ඔය ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවානේ, අපි අල ලුණු අපි මෙහෙ වමනවට වඩා එහෙන් ගන්නකොට අඩුයිනේ. හරිද? එතකොට ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා. හරිද? එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ ප්‍රශ්නේ? So when you are buying something from those large countries, large nations, so if you just think about the India, China, right? So they are large nations. So if you just think about their community, their population, so their population is really high. So when you have that kind of a large population, you have to do the production in mass. That's so when you are having a mass production, so what will happen? ළම production එක වැඩි වෙනකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? එක unit එකකට යන cost එක අඩුයි. So that's the economic theory, right? So we call it as economies of scale. You will be studying it in economics. We call it as economies of scale. අර නිකන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් හිතන්නකො මැෂින් එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා ඔයා ගාව. එක මැෂින් එකකින් 1000ක් හැදුවත් එකම කරන්ට් එක යනවා නම්, එක මැෂින් එකකින් 500ක් හැදුවත් ඒ කරන්ට් එක සප්ලයි එක දෙන්න ඕන නම් 1000ක් හදුවාම මේක වාසි. මොකද එකකට යන cost එක එතකොට අඩු වෙනවනේ fixed cost එකකින්ද. ඔය ගැන පස්සේ කතා කරමු. It might be difficult for you guys. So when it comes to this thing, ඒකින්ද when you have a large nations with the large productions, so that they can produce the product for the lowest cost. ඒගොල්ලන්ට අඩුම cost එකකට හදන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලෝ අඩුම cost එකකට හැදුවාම මොකද වෙන්නේ? ඒගොල්ලන්ට දෙන්න පුළුවන් product එක අඩුම ගානකට. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? දැන් අරහෙන් ගේනේ ඔය එකනේ අපි හිතන්නේ සමහරලාට චයිනා වලින් ගේන එකම product එකක් බලුවාම අපිට හිතෙනවා මේ ගානට අපිට plastic කැලවත් ගන්න බෑනේ කියලා. So we feel like that. So that those are that cheapest, right? So when it comes to those products, so the Sri Lankan producers, then they won't be able to compete with these products. So then it will be becoming a very big problem. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? නැත්තම් අපේ production එක එතකොට නැත්තටම නැති වෙලා යනවානේ. ඒක නවත්තන්න, to stop that, to survive, to protect our domestic producers, sometimes we impose taxes. So when we import something, we import a tax. So their cost plus tax that they have to pay. Right? So then their product price is increasing. So then you start to survive your own products. Right? So the barriers are there. So we call them as the trade barriers. But when it comes to the global forces, right? So some of the countries that they have free trade barriers, may trade barriers අයින් කරනවා, right? ඒගොල්ලෝ එකතු වෙලා trade barriers අයින් කරගන්නවා. So when you don't have trade barriers, that gives many opportunities for the managers. So these are the examples for these kind of free trade agreements. GATT, NAFTA mean North American Free Trade Agreement, European Agreement. So NAFTA in Canada, Mexico, and the US. So when it comes to the SAARC is also something like that. And also we have Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement, Pakistan Free Trade Agreement. So So that there are a lot. So these are the examples for the global forces, right? So with that, we have come to the end of second chapter. And now we'll move to the third one. So we will be covering altogether 4 chapters today, right? So and 4 chapters in next Sunday. So altogether 4. Altogether 8, right? Okay. Now, when we're talking about the planning, I said that there are, sorry, no, when we're talking about the management, we said that there are 4 major managerial functions. So that is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So just because of the importance of these functions, I said that you will be having different chapters to study about these functions. So now we are going to talk about the function which is known as planning. So that's why we say, so the manager as the planner and the strategies. Right, so as a manager, now you're gonna plan your organization. So when it comes to the planning, Lama, it's not just for the manager, right? So it's relevant regard for everyone, right? So if you just think about myself, even yourself, right? We are not the people. I'm not the person who I used to who I was 10 years before, right? I'm totally different. And also, I won't be the same person right after 8 years, the 10 years from today, not even 10 years. In every second that we change, right? We add values for our lives, right? So that happens. So as a person, also you should have a kind of a plan. අපිට දැන් හිතනවානේ අර අවුරුදු 5කින් මම මේ වගේ වෙනවා. දැන් ඔයාලත් ඒකනේ මේ ඩිප්ලෝමා එකක් පටන් ගන්න මොකක් හරි කරන්න හේතුවක් ඇතුව. There should be a reason. So you say, right after 5 years, I'll be a manager in this kind of a firm. So in order to do that, I have to do that. Things. So in order to do that, I should have this stuff, right? So that's what I'm going to do this. So it's a plan. So you have a plan for next 5 years and you work for it, right? So that is known as a plan. So where you need to go in your future, right? And how you can go there. So this is known as planning. So just before you make a plan, when you're doing the plan, so you should understand who you are. දැන් ඔයාට දන්නවා ඇති මේ ඩිප්ලෝමා එකේ තියෙනවා merit ordinary එහෙම කියලා passes එකක්, right? So there are merit, credit and ordinary, right? So to get a merit pass, that you should have 80% attendance, as well as you should participate in all quizzes and you should get marks over 75%, right? So to do that, if you need to get a merit, that you should have a plan, right? At the end of the day, that I should have a merit. So what are the things that I should do? So you should have a plan. Plan එක හදනකොට, you know that to get 75% marks, so you should write good answers. දැන් ඔයා තේරුම් ගන්න ඕනේ මං කොච්චර පාඩම් කරන්න ඕනේද මේක කරන්න. ඔයා පාඩම් කරන ප්‍රමාණය. So whatever the effort that you're going to put, that depends on your capacity. ඔයා ඇත්තටම agriculture දන්න ඔයාට වැඩ පුළුවන් කෙනෙක් නම් සමහර වෙලාවට you might need not to learn a lot. Right? So that depends on you. So as an organization, you should have an idea about your strengths and weaknesses. I mean, you should have a kind of a self-evaluation. ඔයාව self-evaluate කරලා තමයි යන්න ඕන තැන target කරන්නේ. යන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා ලියන්න ඕනේ. So first you have to think about yourself. You should have a self-evaluation. And then you have to set your goals and you should mention the way that you're going to achieve it. So this is what we call as the planning. So the planning is the process that is used by the managers, that they set their goals and they say, they understand who they are, they do the scan and they do set the goals accordingly, and they say whatever the actions that you have to do to achieve these organizational goals, right? So when it comes to the organizational plan, so it's definitely give a kind of a blueprint. You know, if you follow the plan, you will be definitely able to get the organizational goals, right? Plan එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම එහෙ මෙහෙ යන මිනිස්සුන්ව එකට එකතු කරන දෙයක්. So when you are deviating from the organizational goals, so the managers that they use the plan to put you in a kind of an order. So that is something known as plan. Right? So when it comes to the organizations, that the way that you're going to achieve the goals has to be mentioned in the plan too. Right? So this is known as the planning. So when it comes to the planning process, Nama, that there are three steps in the planning process. So they are looped to do three actions, right? So there are three steps to be followed in the planning process. So the first step is that you have to determine, you have to tell whatever the mission and the goals of the organization. So you have to define whatever the business you are in. අපි පස්සේ කතා කරමු මොකක්ද මේ ගැන කියන්නේ කියලා මේ mission ගැන. ඊට පස්සේ මොකද කරන්න ඕනේ? ඔයා ඊට පස්සේ strategy formulate කරන්න ඕනේ. You are formulating the strategies. Then you have to implement those strategies. Right? So first we'll talk about what is this mission. හරි දැන් අපි කතා කරමු මොනවාද මේ mission එක goal එක කියන්නේ කියලා. ළමයි, when it comes to an organization, that there is a kind of an hierarchy. අපි කියනවා ඉස්සෙල්ලාම තියෙනවා vision. ඊට පස්සේ තියෙනවා mission. ඊට පස්සේ තියෙනවා goals, right? So it's a kind of an order. First you have vision, then the mission, then the goals. So the vision in a sense, ළමයි, so there is a nice definition about the vision that was given by Walt Disney, right? So the Walt Disney says, "Lama mage charge ek ma poddak kina meke charge ekara gana off favor." Okay. Now, when it comes to the vision, the best definition, the most attractive definition was given by Walt Disney. Walt Disney says, Lama, so once you close, they are getting a media, make a conference secretary. Walt Disney, Disney World, how you had this intention. He said that he had a kind of a, once he closed the eyes, he had a kind of a dream. So that was his vision. So the vision in a sense, once you close your eyes, right? So the vision in a sense, once you close your eyes, you might have a dream, right? So once you close your eyes, that you might have a kind of a dream. So it's known as the vision. So when it comes to the vision, Lamai, it doesn't mean that you need to make it real. අපිට ඕන දෙයක් dream කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ dream එක වෙන්නත් පුළුවන් නොවෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. It can be happen and also it cannot be. That could be. There is a probability. But vision is something like that. It's a kind of a dream. ඒනොට mission එක එහෙම නෙවෙයි. Mission එක dream එකක් නෙවෙයි. So it is something more achievable, realistic than vision. Right? So the mission, in a sense, that is the purpose of your organization. Your organization exists in order to achieve your mission. So once you achieve the mission, you cannot have it. So you have to change it. But the only difference between the mission and the goal is that the mission cannot be achieved within short time. Mission එක පොඩි කාලයකදී achieve කරන්න බෑ. Mission එකක් achieve කරන්න නම් at least you have to go for 5 to 10 years, right? So that's the long term reason for the existence of your organization. Your organization is there to achieve that mission, right? So the mission, right? The goals කියලා කියන්නේ ඊට වඩා පොඩි ඒවා mission submissions වගේ. Mission is divided into small subcategories. We call them as the goals. Goals are short term. So the people who achieve the goals in short term, that they move towards the mission, right? For මේ goals achieve කරලා they goals ගොඩාක් achieve කරගෙන දවසක අපිට mission එක achieve කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා, right? So that's what we call the mission and goals, right? So when it comes to the mission, so that always describe whatever the business you are in. Mission එක අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම describe කරනවා. So what is our business? Who are our customers? What are the products and services we provide for our customers? So what is the difference between our product and how we different from our competitors? Can අපේ එක value එක මොකක්ද වෙනස් වෙන්නේ අපේ customer මේ competitor ගෙන්? So everything has to be described in the mission, right? So if you just think about this university, right? So I'm university, right? So, once you get out, once you get into the educational market. අපි education එකක් market එකක් කියලානේ කියන්නේ. market එකට ආවට පස්සේ there are a lot of diplomas that you can do in the market. හරිද? ඇයි මේ diploma වලින් agriculture diploma එකක්ම තෝරගත්තේ? When it comes to the agriculture diploma, that there might be lot of institutes that what do you call, who awards diplomas, right? But still, why did you select Bangalore University? So that's, there should be a reason. So that has to be described in mission, right? So why we, right? So what we supply. So that is known as the mission, right? So we call mission and the goal. So in the planning process, the first thing that you have to do is that you have to define your business. You have to mention your mission as well as the goals. Then you have to mention that the way you're going to do it, you have to tell the action that you have to do to achieve these goals. So when you tell about the actions, the strategies, you have to analyze your current situation. Now, මම මෙරිට් එකක් ගන්න කොච්චර පාඩම් කරනවද කියලා තීරණය කරන්නේ ඔයාගේ දැනුම මත. ඔයාට ගොඩක් දන්නවා නම් you don't need to work a lot, right? So that's there. So you have to analyze current situation and then you have to develop your strategies. Right? Then the next thing is not doing, right? So implementation. So you allocate the time and you do it. So that is known as the implementation. So these are the 3 steps of planning, right? So first you have to define your business, you have to determine your mission and goals, then you have to formulate your strategy, and then you have to implement your strategy. Right? So these are the 3 steps of the planning process, right? So the first step, so organizational mission. So you have to define your mission statement. So you have to give a broad declaration of whatever the purpose, the reason for the existence of your product. So as I said you before, so you should say who are your customers, what are your products and services, right? So how your product different from your competitors. So that has to be there in your mission. So if you just go to the toothpaste market, when there are a lot of toothpaste in the market, so why you buy the Sensodyne, right? So that has to be given, right? Organizational mission. Then you have formulating the strategy. So you have to analyze your current situation and you have to tell whatever the actions that you have to take in order to achieve the mission. Then the next thing is implementing. කරන්න කිව්වා විතරනේ දැන් මම හිතනවා හරි මගේ මෙච්චරයි මට දැනුම තියෙන්නේ අඩුම තරමේ මම දවසට 6ක් පාඩම් කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා හිතුවට වැඩ නැහැ කරන්න බෑ. So you have to do it, implementing the strategy, right? So that's there. මේක ඉන්නෝනේ මේ slide එකට පස්සේ ළමයි. So first we talk about this, right? So then when it comes to the planning, ළමයි, so if you can remember, when it comes to the organization, I said that there are the managers are in levels, right? The managers line levels. So on top you had the top managers and the middle managers and the frontline managers. All these managers makes plans, lamai, irrespective to whatever the level that you are, right? So irrespective to whatever the level that you are, that you will be making the plans. Managers will make the plans, right? So when it comes to the managers at the top level in the managers, lamai plan karanne gollu mulu organization that they make the plan for the entire organization. They see the entire organization as a whole and they make the plan for the entire organization. So we call these kind of plans are corporate level plans, right? So the decisions by the top managers, right? So you consider whatever the business you get into, is this department fitting, right? You provide framework for the entire organization. Corporate taking balla තමයි අනිත් අයත් ඒකට හරියන්න තමයි plans හදන්නේ. So the corporate level plan. So the next one is the business level planning, right? So you design the divisional plans, right? So the divisional plans, right? Corporate level line in the business level. You make the functional level plans. So the actions taken by the managers in different departments like manufacturing, marketing, right? So when it comes to the plans, that they might be in different level, like corporate level plans, business level plans, functional level plans, okay? Corporate level plans, business level plans, functional level plans, level plans, right? So when it comes to the General Electric, so the corporate levels, you have the CEOs and the corporate office that they make the corporate level plans, and the business level for the different businesses, you have the different businesses that you make the different business plans for the aircraft, lightning, motors, plastics. So these are the business level plan. So under a particular business, like that if you take the lightning and if you take the aircraft, they have different function plans for the different businesses, manufacturing, marketing, accounting, and R&D. Right? So those are known as the functional level plan. Right? Corporate level planning, business level planning, and the functional level planning. Okay. So that's about the planning levels. And now we are going to talk about the different types of plans, right? So when we're talking about the plans, there might be different types of plans. There are a number of types of plans, but for your level, we will be talking about very simply, right? So we will be talking about the plans that is based on a single dimension. We will be taking only time as the dimension. Again, අපිට ගොඩාක් දේවල් ගන්න ගැන කතා කරන්න පුළුවන් වුණත් ඔයාලගේ විදිහට අපි කතා කරන්නේ පොඩි කැලලක් ගැන, time එක ගැන විතරයි. So when it comes to the plan, it can be divided, it can be classified into few types that is based on the time horizon. So we take the time as the dimension to categorize the plan, right? So when it comes to the plan, if the plan is there for 1 year, annual plans, annual plan, 1 year plan. If it's less than 1 year, we call them as short-term plan. We call them as the short-term plan. Good up marketing plan. If the sales sales. Again, if got the mass hiking with the sales, right? So it's a short-term plan then, right? So the short-term plan, in a sense, if it's less than 1 year, we call it as a short-term plan. So if it's more than if it's like more than 1 year but less than 5 years, so we call it as an intermediate term. So if it's more than 5 years, it's a long term. So if it's a long term, it has to be definitely from the corporate level, right? Top managers lamai එක හදන්නේ. මේකට නම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට middle කට්ටියට හදන්න පුළුවන්. Short term plan නම්, so it's mostly by the functional. So when it comes to the plans, so it depends on the time. So you can divide the plans like into 3 categories, like short term, intermediate term, and the long term. So the short term, in a sense, less than 1, intermediate, in a sense, 1 to 5. So the long term, in a sense, more than 5 years. So, or else, if you're going to do the plan, execute the plans within a year, we call it as an annual plan too. Right? So the long term plan, in a sense, more than 5 years. So it's a kind of a large scale expectation. So you have to set the goals for the long term future. So then, most of the time, the corporate managers, the top managers at the corporate level, the plans has to be done. Right? So the intermediate, in a sense, so that is for the business plans, the business level plans, like 1 to 5 years. So that examples are business level plans. So the short term, in a sense, most of the functional plans, right? So as we have described, so that's there. And sometimes, so there might be some of the plans, right? So sometimes you might not end the plan. You add some values, goals for it, and you continue it, right? So the most of the plans that you do not end, you add some goals into it and you continue it. So we call these kind of plans as rolling plan. It can roll right? So the constantly, and also the most firms that they have rolling planning cycle, that they amend the plans continuously, constantly, right? So that's there. Then, why the planning is such important, right? So why do you need to have a plan? So as I said you before, so in order to complete something, there are 4 things to be there. Successful වෙන්න නම් 4ක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Pillars 4ක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ අර මං කිව්වා වගේ. So there should be 4 pillars. Willingness has to be there, effort has to be there, and also the plan has to be there, right? Then the review. So these are the stuff. If you do not have a plan, so then you cannot go forward. So that's why I said when it comes to the General Electrics, the companies like General Electric, so they survive in the market just because of this, the plan that they had in their company. So it doesn't matter whoever the rule the company, whoever the lead the company, but what matters is that whether you have a very good plan. right? So when you're having a plan, Lama, so the participation is the most important thing. So when you make the plans, you know all the managers as well as employees, then අපි අර හැමෝම කතා වෙලානේ plan කරන්නේ. So everybody will involved in creating the plans. Participation is there. And also in a plan, you have to have mentioned all the duties and the roles of everyone. So everyone is included in the plan. Participation එක හැමෝගෙම පැහැදිලිවම තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි උනත් අපේ යුනිවර්සිටි එකකට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඉයර් ප්ලෑන් එකක් දෙනවා මුළු දවස් පළවෙනි දවසේම අවුරුද්දේ. ඒක දෙනකොට ඒක කියනවා කට්ටියගේ එක එක්කෙනාගේ ඩියුටි. ඒකට හැමෝම ඉන්නවා කාටවත් නෑ කියන්න බෑ. Right, so the participation is something really important. So all the managers are involved in setting the future goals as well as all the managers are included in the plan. Not only the managers, each and every employee included in the plan. And also there is a direction and purpose. Plan එකක් තියෙනකොට goal එකක් තියෙනවා, right? Goal එක තියෙනවා, strategies තියෙනවා, මෙහෙම යන්න කියලා තියෙනවා. So you have the goals and you say that you have to go in this route, right? So it's clearly mentioned. Sense of the direction and the purpose is there. Merit pass එක ගන්න ඕනේ කියලා කියනවා. දැන් ඔන්න පැයක් පාඩම් කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා මේ විදිහට යන්න ඕනේ කියලා. So that there is a way. So the sense of the direction and the purpose is there. Then the coordination. So when you have the plan, it provides all the parts of the firm that it says that who report to whom you should coordinate. So from whom you get the resources, everything is there. Coordination is there. And the control. Right, the plan became a right. So this is the goal to increase the sales by 5%. So how can you get? You have to get the number of sales. So you have to compare it with the actual target. So it describes the way that you're going to control. So the plan specifies who is the in charge of the achieving that particular goal and how you're going to control it. So that's there. Right? So when it comes to the planning, so that's why the planning is important. So the participation is there, sense of direction is there, coordination, communication, control is there. So that's why the planning is important. So in here we have this. We are going to discuss about the things that we have discussed earlier. මම අර පළවෙනි slide එකේදී අපි මේ ටික discuss කරා. So this is the first step. So the first step of the planning process. So first you have to define the mission and the goals, right? So the defining the mission in the sense that you have to define whatever the business you are involved in. Whatever the business you are involved in, whatever the products that you produce, who are your customers, how your business different from your competitors, right? That has to be there. Then you have to have established your major goals. So that means according to the mission, you have to set your goals, right? So that's why I say the mission has to be divided into sub goals, right? So that's there. So the major goals has to be there. Now you are going to implement the develop the business strategies. ඒ කියන්නේ කොහොමද අපි මේ mission එකට goals වලට යන්නේ කියලා strategies කියනවා. You're going to mention about the strategies, right? So when we're talking about the strategies, Lama, so that there is a person who called Michael Porter. There was a person who called Michael Porter. So he is the one who mentioned about these business strategies. අපි කියන Michael Porter's generic strategies කියලා. So he introduced 3 strategies like low cost, differentiation, and focus. But in here, your level, we will be talking about only 2 strategies like low cost and differentiation. We are not going to talk about the focus, but we will be discussing about it in your marketing lesson. Low cost කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි. So your competition. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් මේ business strategy එක කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි. So when you get into the market, right? So I said there are large number of competitors are there. So the customers that they should have a reason to buy your product, but not your competitor's product, right? Why should they buy your product? So now you should have a strategy, right? So the first strategy is the low cost. You say that, of course, in the market, no one can sell the product like my price. My price is the best price. So no one will be able to sell the product for the lowest price like my company. So you get the lowest price. කියලා ඔයා කියනවා. ඒක තමයි වාසිය. ඔයාලට මගේ තරම් අඩුවට හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් ඇස් දැ හැම යන්නේමනේ ඇස් ද තරම් අඩුවට UK වල කොහෙවත් ගන්න බෑ කියලා ඒගොල්ලෝ කියනවා. Right? So that's there. So the low cost strategy. So the low price strategy. Low price යන්න නම් මොකද වෙන්න ඕනේ? අඩුවට දෙන්න නම් අඩුවෙන් හදන්න ඕනේ. අඩුවට දෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ අඩුවට හදුවොත්. So you can sell for the lowest price if you produce it for the low cost. Low cost එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ කොහොමද? අර මම කලින් කිව්ව economies of scale. The fixed cost එක අඩු හින්දා fixed cost එක හින්දා when you produce more and more products, when you produce in bulk products, so what will happen? So your unit cost will be decreasing. So you can sell the product for the lowest price in the market. So that is known as the low cost. Low cost හදනවා නම් මොනවද කරන්න ඕනේ? හැමතිස්සෙම waste එක reduce කරන්න ඕනේ, පුළුවන් තරම් අඩු cost එකක් තියාගන්න ඕනේ. So that has to be there. So the low cost, if you take the low cost as the competitive advantage, so you have to reduce or the trim the organizational cost. So the managers has a big role that they have to reduce the manufacturing cost as well as they have to reduce the waste. Right? So the lower cost in a sense that you can give the product for the lowest price. So that is your competition to your competitors. Right? So that's one thing. And the next thing is we are not talking about the price. The price can be high, but my product is differentiated from the other competitor products. So that's why I said when it comes to the toothpaste market, when there are lots of other toothpaste in the market, why do people buy Sensodyne for the high prices? Why do people buy Colgate for high prices? Because of the differentiation that they have some value. දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් අපි අය මිනිස්සු Mercedes ගන්න. So because there is a prestige, අය මිනිස්සු BMW ගන්න. Because of the driving experience, because Volvo එතකොට safety, that there is a value, even though they are high prices, but still that they have a value. Right? I මිනිස්සු ගොඩක් අර මේ WagonR වගේ යන්නේ. It's low cost. Right? Differentiation එකක් ඕනේ. That is low cost. Right? Differentiation එක කියලා කියන්නේ that can be high prices, but people buy it because of the value that they get from that particular product. Right? අපි ගත්තොත් සමහර වෙලාවට milk powder එකක් ගන්නකො. I මිනිස්සු පළවත් ගන්න. I මිනිස්සු Mediban ගන්න. සමහර Highland ගන්න because that they have a value in each brand. So the differentiation. So the differentiation, when you are making a differentiation, it has to be something valued by the customer, right? So if you have a successful differentiation, so that will definitely give you a chance to charge more from your customers. ඒකනේ Mercedes ලා හැම වැඩි ලොකු ගාණක් වලට දෙන Range Rover එකක්. අතත් සාමාන්‍ය වාහන වගේ නෙවෙයි, right? So the differentiation. So that's there. Right? So you have to think about those stuff. Differentiation එකක් කරනකොට තමයි මතක තියාගන්න low cost වගේ නෙවෙයි differentiate කරනවා කියන්නේම cost එකක් යනවා because you have to in another way you have to customize your product, right? So that means so you have to have bear a cost. So when you need to differentiate, there are some organizations that they try to make their self differentiate as well as with the low cost. So it's difficult to do. Differentiate කරන්න යනවා කියන්නේම cost එක වැඩි වෙනවා කියන එක. So it's difficult to simultaneously become differentiated than low cost. So then these kind of organizations that they might stuck in the middle. දෙකම එකපාර කරන්න ගිහලා සමහරලාට අනා ගන්න පුළුවන්. So that is there. So this is what we have to talk about the strategies. Then you have to implement these strategies. හරිද? implement කරන එක ගැන කතා කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. So what we have mentioned is the first step and the second step. Then you have to implement them by using the resources. That we are not going to talk about those stuff. So with that, we have come to the end of third chapter 2. So in third chapter, we have to start to talk about the major managerial functions. So that is the planning. So in planning, I said that there are 3 steps, right? So we talk about the mission statements, and then we talk about the strategy formulation and strategy implementation. So there might be 3 planning levels: the corporate level plans, business plans, and the functional level plans. And also we talk about the types of plans. So that is based on the time dimension, time horizon. And then we talk about why it is important to have a plan, because we have to take the participation of all employees, and there is a direction, coordination, as well as control. So then we talk about the way that we state the mission and the goals. And then we talk about the different types of business strategies like low cost and the differentiation. So let's go to our last chapter. So that is organizing. So just give me a few seconds to open it, right? Okay, we'll start our last chapter for the day now. Right? So that is organizing. So as I said you before, that there are four managerial functions. So the first one is planning, and now we are going to talk about organizing. So to tell you about the importance of the organizing. Organizing කියන එක කොච්චර වැදගත්ද කියන එකට කියන්න මම ඊයේ පාඩමේදී කටියට කිව්වා. I gave you a kind of a good example, case study එකක් පොඩි. හරිද? The best example is Lama, this Renault Nissan alliance, right? So when it comes to the Renault Nissan strategic alliance, now the Mitsubishi is also there, as I remember. But anyway, I'm talking about the initiation. Hari the Renault Nissan alliance එක පටන් ගන්න යන කාලේ මම මේ ගැන කතා කරන්නේ. So when they were starting the Renault and Nissan, right? So the Renault CEO at that time, right? So the Renault CEO at that time that they wanted to merge with Japan's Nissan, right? But at that time, that there was a very big problem with Nissan, that they were very close to even bankrupt, right? They were even very close to become bankrupt. So Renault CEO then Nissan එකට එක join වෙන්න ඕන වුණා merge වෙන්න, but he has realized the importance of making this into a profitable company. So what he did just hire a turnaround artist. Turnaround artist කෙනෙක් කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි. So when you see a particular company is close to bankrupt or not profit accordingly, that sometimes you buy a kind of a business tycoon or a kind of a business giant to convert this unprofitable business into a profitable business. So his duty is to identify whatever the problems there are and take the remedies to make it into a successful business. So this cannot be done by a very average person. So there should be a very successful business person to do it, right? So Donald Trump is a kind of some turnaround artist, and also here that they have hired a person called Charles Gosling, right? So he's a kind of a very famous person, Carlos Gosling, right? As I remember. He was the person who hired. ඊට පස්සේ දැන් මේක අපිට වැදගත් වෙන්නේ මේකයි, right? So the Gosling, he went to see Nissan, right? So he just have monitored Nissan, and he realized the biggest problem in Nissan is the organizational structure, that they didn't have a kind of a proper organizational structure. When something goes wrong, that there was no person to take the responsibility. So the blaming culture was there. When something went wrong, so the sales blame the product planning team blame engineering team blame sales team, sales blame finance, and on, right? So nothing ever got solved. So the goal is that this is a kind of a do or die business, right? So do or die situation. Either that they have to fix the fundamental problem, or Nissan would definitely die, right? So then he realized, so the organizational structure was the biggest problem. So he said that the structure has to be totally renewed, and there should be clearly said that who report to whom and the resource allocation. So the responsibility has to be taken by the people in the organizational structure. So he changed the structure, and he made the Nissan into a successful company, and they made the alliance between the Renault and the Nissan, and that became a kind of a most beneficial alliance, one of the most beneficial alliances that you see in the history. Right? So that's there. So the why I gave you this example is to give you an idea about the importance of the organizing and the organizational structure. If you cannot organize the stuff, then though you have a good plan, if you cannot organize the stuff, then you will end up with failures. Right? So that's what I wanted to tell you. Then now let's talk about the organizing, right? So the organizing in a sense, so how you're going to allocate, how going to use the organizational resources to achieve the organizational goals. So in here you say that how do you coordinate with the organization? I mean, how you coordinate with the people within the organization. So the organizing, it's a kind of a process where the manager mentioned that the relationship among the employees within the organization and the way that you're going to allocate the resources to achieve the organizational goals, right? So that has to be there in organizing process. So through the organizing process, when you are organizing, your organization, then you have to use a tool which is known as the organizational structure. So the organizational structure, in a sense, so it's a kind of a formal system that the tool that managers use to give you an idea about the way that you go, the way they get, the way that they're going to use the resources and to who report whom. So that has to be described in the organizational structure. Right, so when you have the organizational structure, it gives you a design, a kind of an organizational chart that gives the managers to specific choices in the organizational structure. So when you have the organizational structure, so that define whatever the task assigned to the particular individuals as well as the departments, and also it gives you an idea about the reporting system, reporting relationships, who report to whom, හරිද line authority එක කවුද කී දෙනෙක් එක්කෙනෙක්ට report කරනවද, කීයක් lines තියෙනවද, ඒ කියන්නේ number of levels, හරිද hierarchical levels කීයක් තියෙනවද, එක්කෙනෙක්ට කී දෙනෙක් report කරනවද, who report to whom. So everything has to be described in the organizational structure. So that's the importance of the organization structure. So when you are making an organization structure, when you are making your organization design, so there are few things that you have to think about. Whether you are going to have a tall structure, then organizational structures basically we divide it into two categories. The first one is the tall category. but it's tall. There are a number of layers. So the flat structures means, so when it comes to the layers, there are only two or three layers, but there are a number of people who report to a particular person. අපි මේකට කියනවා span of control කියලා, right? The number of individuals who report to a particular manager, right? So we call it as the span of employee, right? So span of control. මේක ගත්තාම layers ගන්න අඩුයි. මේක ගත්තාම layers ගන්න වැඩි. මේක tall structure එකක්. මේක flat එකක්. දැන් ඔයාලට මෙතනදී මේක, if you can see this, there is a one person who have all the authority. They can centralize. මේක decentralize කරනවා. පුළුවන් තරම් disperse karna, right? So that is there. So when it comes to the organizational design, whether you are going to have a tall structure or flat structure, so that is depend on these factors. Then අපි කල්පනා කරොත් ළමයි human resource එක. Right? So if you just think about the human resource, if you have skilled labors, then හිතන්නකො most of the IT companies ගත්තොත්, if you just take about the most of the IT companies that they allow them to work from home. Why is that? Because that they rely on them, that they give them that flexibility because they know that they have that skill. හරිද skill එක තියෙනවා මොකක් හරි program එකක් හදන්න තියෙන ඒක හදලා වැඩ කරනවා නම් වැඩේ හරි. So the human resource එක කියන්නේ more skill. So you have to retain them, otherwise that they might migrate, right? So that's why they might migrate or they might turn their job away, right? So when you have skilled labors, you don't need to monitor them. So if you just think about the lecturers, right? අපිට උනත් ළමයි අපි ගිහිල්ලා මේ කොහෙවත් fingerprints වත් එහෙම එකක් ගහන්නේ නැහැ. So they don't check whether we come or not. අපි ආවද නැද්ද කියලා කවුරුත් බලන්නේ නැහැ කැම්පස් එකක. හරිද? අපි අපේ room එකක් තියෙන අපි කාටවත් කියන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ඒක ගිහිල්ලා අපි වැඩ කරලා එනවා. ඒත් අපිට work norm එකක් තියෙනවානේ. So we have a work norm. We do the lectures according to that, right? So no one there to monitor us, right? So if we just have to participate in the meetings, that's it. But no one is there to monitor, right? That's the nature, because we feel that this particular category is skilled, right? Human resource එක skilled නම් අපි monitor කරන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට ඕනේ අපිට නිකන් flat structure එකක්, flexible වෙන්න ඕනේ. So that has to be there, right? So the next thing is the strategy. දැන් අපි කතා කරපු strategy දෙක මොනවාද? Low cost and differentiation. So the low cost in the sense that you have to reduce the waste. Reduce කරන්න නම් ඒක පොඩ්ඩක් rigid එකක් වෙන්න ඕන, right? එතකොට අපිට flexible net එකක් use කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි differentiation නම්, so you have to customize and you have to do that. So you have to have a flexible structure. හරිද? ඊළඟට environment එක ගත්තාම, if it's a turbulent environment, if it's a changing and dynamic environment, so then you have to respond continuously, spontaneously, right? So then what should happen? So you should have a flexible structure. අනිත් පැත්තට ගත්තොත් අපි rigid culture එක නම් වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැති government වගේ එකකට නම් අපිට tall structure එකක් තියාගන්න පුළුවන්. Then the technology. So the whatever the technology that you're going to use, right? Samahara වෙලාවට අපි high technology එකක් use කරනවා නම් අපිට flexible structure එකක් use කරන්න වෙනවා. So the depends on the environment, strategy, human resource, technology. So these factors determine whether you're going to have a tall structure or a flat structure, right? So that's there. Then now we are going to talk about different structures, Lamai. So we are going to talk about different organizational structures. So when we're talking about the organizational structures, Lamai, so the first one that we're going to talk about is the functional structure. Functional structure එක කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි. So you are grouping grouping the positions into the departments. So that is based on the skills and the work that they do. හරිද? දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් මෙන්න තියෙනවා functional structure එකක්. මේ ඉන්න CEO උඩ, CEO is on top. So you divide the departments based on the functions. Maybe in finance, stores, logistics, marketing, manufacturing. So that is based on the functions. So the people who do those activities will be in this department. Either finance again, finance activities, finance qualifications, finance experience in a kattiya. Sima eva karapu kattiya. Marketing in a sim karapu kattiya. Right? So just like that. So when it comes to the functional structure, so the people are working together with the similar skills. Right? There are people who with the similar experience, people who have used the similar techniques, right? So they work together in these departments. So the structure based on the functions, right? So the advantage of this is, Lamai, so when you work with the people who know a particular activity, you can learn from the others. So that's value. හරිද? දැන් මම marketing කරන කෙනෙක් නම් මම එයාගෙන් මට තව marketing ටිකක් ඉගෙන ගන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද මට වඩා දන්න අය ඉන්න පුළුවන්. So it's you can learn from others. And also the managers that they can easily manage. දැන් එකම දේ නේ අතුලේ කරන්න. දැන් මම manager කෙනෙක් කරා මගේ අතේ finance කරන marketing කරන එහෙම ආයෙත් sometimes I don't know about finance, right? So I have to regulate the people who do the finance, but I don't know. At the marketing විතරක්ම ඉඳලා මමත් marketing නම් කරන්නේ, it would be easy for the managers to monitor and evaluate the workers. But the disbenefit is the making disadvantage එක තමයි, it's hard for department to communicate with others. ඒ කියන්නේ finance එකේ අය ඔක්කොම එකට ඉන්නේ, එතන marketing අය නෑනේ. ඒකට ඒගොල්ලෝ ඉන්නේ වෙනමම. So that's the problem. If you are in a company, then ඔයාලා වැඩ කරනවා නම් company වල ඔයාලා දැකලා ඇති. So when it comes to the marketing people, that it's become very difficult for them to approve their budget from the finance people, because that it's hard for them to communicate. මොකද finance එක හැමතිස්සෙම හිතන්නේ marketing එක කරන්නේ බොරු වැඩක් කියලා. So that's there. Right? So this problem is there. So the managers have to think about these stuff, these benefits and the disbenefits. So that's about the functional structure. Then we have something called divisional structure. That isella api department වලට base කළේ. Then in the functional structure we have divided into departments that is based on the functions. So in here we divide the divisions based on the එක්ක ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකට, එක්ක ජියෝග්‍රැෆික් එකට, එක්ක මාකට් එකට. එහෙම ඒවට අපි කියනවා ප්‍රොඩක්ට් ස්ට්‍රක්චර්, ජියෝග්‍රැෆික් ස්ට්‍රක්චර්, මාකට් ස්ට්‍රක්චർ. So the divisional structure that can be so in contrast to the functional structure, so the divisional structure, so that depends on the organizational output. ඔයාගේ organization එකේ output එක මොකද්ද? product එක මොකද්ද? ඒක geography එක මොකද්ද? market එක මොකද්ද? So that depends on the output. So when it comes to the functional structure, it depends on the functions. So when it comes to the divisional structure, so that is they depend on the output of the organization. That can be the product, that can be the geography or the market. So there might be three types of structure. So when it comes to this structure, Lama, it was initially came from a person who called Alfred Sloan, right? So he was the long-time CEO of General Motors. He was the first to introduce this concept, and the Bill Gates has described this as the most important management book ever written, because when it comes to the Microsoft, that they use this model in their divisional structure. So when it comes to the Microsoft, that they use the product structure, හරිද නම මම යන උදාහරණ වලට so this is a kind of an example for the product structure දැන් මේ අපි කරන්න යන divisional structures වලට උදාහරණ product structure එකට geographic structure එකට market structure වලට examples දෙන්න යන්නේ so I'm going to give example for the divisional structure so the first one is the product structure so here when it comes to the product structure CEO is there and then the corporate managers are there so this the other division for the output products මේකේ ඇවිල්ලා washing machine light television so if you just think about the Microsoft that they have Windows division right so that they have so if you just think about the Microsoft that they have the Windows divisions that they have operating system related software online services servers and tools and they have online service decisions like Bing MSN and the Microsoft businesses are their Office 365 entertainment got the Xbox Skype so these are the businesses so these are the businesses if you just think about the Unilever ekena combination එකක් තියෙනවා නිකන් හිතලා ගත්තොත් Unilever ගත්තොත් food and beverages personal care Unilever purity and food ඒ වගේ යනවා හරිද personal care ඊළඟට household එහෙම යන්නේ හරිද so that there are different product items right so based on the product okay so this is known as the product structure then you have the geographic structure කියන්නේ CEO ඉන්න corporate managers අදින අපි service දෙන products යවන geographic area the Unilever ගත්තම ඉස්සෙල්ලාම බෙදනවනේ Unilever Europe and Unilever Hindustan so that's how it goes geographic structure right ඊට පස්සේ තමයි අර then they go to the product structure so it's a kind of a combination right so when it comes to the Coca-Cola also that they have a kind of a geographic structure if you just think about the Starbucks that they have America Europe and China and the Asia Pacific. So that's a kind of a geographic structure, right? So when it comes to the geographic structure, so the division, when you are making the division, so you group according to the geographic or the region that you deal with. The next thing is the customer. So you divide the market based on the customer. දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් බැංක් එකක අපි කියන්නේ platinum customers ලා corporate customers ලා අන්න එහෙම කියන්නේ educational customers ලා so just like that when it comes to the market structure so you think about the group of customers that you deal with right so you make the structure based on it right දැන් අපිට ඉන්න platinum එකට ඉන්න මේ බැංක් එකක ගත්තාම AGM එක හරිද ඒ වගේ එහෙම යන්නේ so that's an example for the market structure right so then we are going to talk about the matrix structure. Matrix එක කියලා කියන නම so it's a combination. So it's a combination of the functional and the divisional structure, right? So when it comes to the managers who lead the group of people, so sometimes that they have to lead the people in both functional and product teams simultaneously. Then they can use this kind of a structure, matrix structure. මම උදාහරණයකට යන්නම් එතකොට ලේසි වෙනවා. මේ දින matrix structure එකක්. So if you can see this, you can see then මේ තියෙන sales, design, production. මේ කියන්නේ මොනවද? Functions. මේ තියෙන CEO ඉන්නවා, functional managers ලා තියෙනවා. So this is a kind of an example for the functional structure. අපි අර මුලින්ම ඉගෙන ගත්තේ functional structure. So if you can see this, so here you can see the product team A, product B, product C. So this is a product structure. Divisional structure වල එකක් ඉගෙන ගත්තේ product structure එක කියලා. So this is a combination of the functional structure and the divisional structure, which is a product structure. So if you can see, it's a combination. So we call this as a matrix. This is known as a matrix structure. So if you can see a person in here, employee in here, that they have two bosses. So you can see that he reports to the sales manager as well as product team B manager. So this is known as matrix structure. So the unique feature of the matrix is that it has dual lines of authority. Authority then again, so the dual lines of authority is there. Right? So this is a kind of an example for the matrix structure. So when you have a kind of a complex network of reporting relationship, you use this kind of a matrix structure. So it's very flexible because you have to respond rapidly. So when it comes to them, they have two bosses which can sometimes create problems, right? So this is what we have initially talked about. I said that we have two types like tall and flat structures. Tall, so you have many layers. එක layer එකකට report කරන ගාන පොඩි. So the span of the control is low, right? So the levels in the hierarchy increase, of course. The communication is little bit difficult, but when it comes to this අපි දැක්ක government වගේ කට්ටියට අපි කියන්නේ අතන්ට ගිහිල්ලා මෙතනට ගිහිල්ලා එතනට ගිහිල්ලා එන්න කියලා කියන්නේ. So it's a kind of a toll structure, right? So when it comes to the communication, that might be also confusing and grabble, right? So එකම දේ සමහර වෙලාවට එකපාරකින් යාගේ sign එක දාලා ආයි ඇවිල්ලා අතන්ටම ආයි sign එක දාන්න යන කියනවා. So that's there. So you might have seen this when it comes to taking your license එක ගන්න යනකොට දැකලා තියෙනවා නේද? health certificate එක license එකට ගන්න යනකොට medical එක කරගෙන. So that's there. So then the flat structure in a sense that you have few levels but wide span එකක් තියෙනවා. හරිද? few levels තියෙන්නේ හැබැයි keep ගොඩ දෙනෙක් එක්කෙනෙක්ට report කරනවා. So wide span of control is wide, here it's narrow, right? So when it comes to them, that you can communicate them quickly, so it's very flexible, this kind of a structure, right? So this is about the organizing. So with that we have come to the end of this chapter. So now if you can have a recap, now we have talked about the organizing. So how you're going to organize your organization, right? So you have to make the things in order. You have to allocate the resources. You have to mention how the relationship happened, to who report who. Then we talk about the organizational structure. We said the factors that determine the organizational design of the structure, like environment, strategy, human resource, and technology. And we have talked about the types of structures, like functional structures and the divisional structures. So in divisional structures, we have talked about 3 types of divisional structures, like product, geographic, and market structure. So with that, we have come to the end of this chapter 2, right? So with that, we have come to the end of today's session event. So we'll do the next session next Sunday at the same time. I mean, from 7 to 11. So if you have any question now, you can ask. I'll give you a few minutes to ask the questions. So when it comes to the quizzes, Lamar, please remember, it doesn't matter the number, the marks that you can get. The only thing that you should remember is you should take part. Participate in quiz, right? ලකුණු ගන්න බැරි වුණාත් නම් කොහොම හරි participate කරන්න. Participate කරේ නැති වුණොත් අපිට upgrade කරන්නවත් බෑ. Right? සමහර වෙලාවට කට්ටියට ලකුණු අඩුයි නම් we used to upgrade it. Sometimes if we feel like that you all have low marks, then we used to give some like additional marks and upgrade it, right? But you can't do it if you do not participate into the quizzes. So that's the problem. So you can get easily this diploma, please participate. So that's the important thing. So there won't be any drop. මට ඕනේ මේ 220ම අන්තිම වෙනකල්ම ගෙනියගෙන 220ම ගන්න. එහෙම කරන්න නම් you all have to participate in all the quizzes. So that's the main thing. That's the essential. That's the first criteria. You know that you have paid more than 50% of the course fee now, right? 30,000 already paid. So that is more than 50%. You know the total course fees is 58,500. Right? So right after paying 50% of the course, if you're going to drop it in middle, so it will be a waste. So please remember to participate the lectures as much as possible. I don't ask you to participate in each and every lecture, but as possible, right? So you have to participate the best. But in quizzes, you don't have exception. You have to participate in all the quizzes because that is the assessment, right? So you have to do it. So if with that, you might be able to get the diploma without any problem. So මම කියන්නේ මෙරිට් එකක්ම ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. පාස් වෙලා award එක ගන්න පුළුවන්. මෙරිට් එකක් ගන්න කි පොඩ්ඩක් වැඩ කළා කරන එක වෙනම කතාවක්. But there are a lot of people who got merit, right? So please remember that. So if you get a merit, so that will give you an additional chance. You know definitely that you will be able to take part in the degree program, right? So and also even if you need to apply for the foreign degrees, right? So you can apply from the diploma, right? So there are many people in the first batch who have applied, who have already applied and got the chances in the seats in foreign universities. So that's there. So please remember to do it well, right? I mean, take part in all the quizzes. So that's my advice, okay? With that, if you don't have any question, we can... Okay. Your LMS, in that case, you have to talk to Dinuk, right? So you get the Dinuk's number, and I'll share it with Fahim, right? So you can get the number from Fahim. So talk to Dinu, can create the LMS account. We'll share the video with you guys, right? I give you 2-3 minutes. If you have any question, you can ask. If not, that we can wind up the session. So the quiz of this lecture will be right after the end of the course. In each and every course, right after the end of the course, we'll let you know the dates and everything. Right, so you get into the WhatsApp group also. But anyway, for the first few quizzes that we will be informing through the emails too. Right, so we will let you know the time and date. So normally that is at the end of the lectures. අපි ඉවර වුණාට පස්සේ දැන් ලබන සතියේ සයසුරාදී ඉඳලා කරාට පස්සේ ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ඊළඟ ඊට පස්සේ සිකුරාදා ඒ කියන්නේ පාඩම් කරන්න ටිකක් දවස් දෙනවා. We will give you time to learn, and Friday or next Monday, right? So that will be the date, right? So we'll let you know the time and the date and everything. So the time will be like 8 to 12. That means the night, from 8 to midnight 12, right? So that is just because for the convenience of the people who work, right? So that's there. Please tell about LMS QA. I don't understand. I'm not the person who do the LMS training. So I'll send you the video. That's what I can do. I send you the LMS video, the training session. So you go through it and try to create your LMS account. If you cannot do it, I'll give you the number. That is Dinuk's number. So he is the person who handles this LMS stuff. So call him and create your LMS. Because I'm not the one who train you guys, so I'm not the person who handle the LMS, right? Okay. So if you don't have any question, we can wind up the session. We will be meeting again on next Sunday. I'll be doing the same lectures on Saturday as well as Sunday. So how to put attendance? You don't need to worry about it. We will be getting it through the Zoom report. You know, as this is the Zoom lecture, we can get the Zoom detailed report, right? So through the report, we can get your attendance. So it says how long you have been there, duration, the time that you log in, and the time that you went off. So the breakages that you had, everything is there in Zoom report. So normally we take the report and submit it to the office. They are the people who create the attendance, right? So that's how it takes. Not only for you guys, for the internal people, even when we do the online lectures, we get the attendance like that. We get the Zoom report and we submit it to the office. අපි attendance තියාගන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ඒවා අරගෙන අපි අපේ Zoom එකෙන් ගන්නවා. අපි ටක් ගාලා ඒ ටික යවලා දානවා ඉච්චරයි. එහෙමයි කරන්නේ. Okay, if you don't have any question, you can wind up the session. So as I said before, we'll meet again on Saturday and Sunday. So the people who do not people who, I mean, as I already informed, if you won't come on Saturday, you can come on Saturday. If you feel like you can come on Sunday, irrespective to whatever the group you are in, you can participate in any day. So if you feel like that you won't vote, that is there any official? That's the official WhatsApp group, right? So there won't be any other official WhatsApp group. So the whatever the WhatsApp group that Fahim creates, it's the official WhatsApp group. So the Fahim, please remember that is the official WhatsApp group. So please ask others to don't put any unnecessary stuff. So you have to maintain the quality of that, right? Yes. LMS and Moodle is same, of course. Dinu's number, I don't have my phone here, it's downstairs, so I'll get the phone number and share it with Fahim. Fahim will share it with you guys, right? Dinu's number, not Miss, right? Dinuk. He's a boy. He's a IT demonstrator. He's a lecturer too, right? Okay, so I hope that we don't have any questions. So if we don't have further questions, we can end up the session. So as I said before, we meet again next Sunday from 7 to 11 again. And ඊළඟ සතියේ ඉඳන් lectures වෙලා වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? So I'll let you know the time. Okay. ඒ කියන්නේ ඊළඟ සතිය කියන්නේ මගේ එක නෙවෙයි, from ඊළඟ session එකේ ඉඳන්. හරිද? For my session, of course, I'll be starting from 7 to 11, but from the next week onwards, that there might be the changes. Okay, with that, we'll stop the session now. Thank you.